Hi, everybody, welcome. I'm Aurora. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And today I'm finally starting to get into level 2 material. I actually did, when I said I was doing level 1 advanced stuff, I actually did do a lot of the level 2, lesson 2 stuff that is about ascended mastery and that central core timeline. So that was the one that I said I was going outside of the curriculum and doing that one kind of a little bit out of order, but it wasn't that much out of order. But don't be confused. Okay. Today is level 2, lesson 3, and it is about duality and perception. This is crucial because, sorry, I'm distracted looking for this. A huge aspect of what I have to share with Flying Rainbow Lasagna is the concept of non-duality. And when I tell you about non-duality, please never misconstrue this as saying like there's no difference between good and evil. There's a big difference between good and evil. There's a big difference between hot and cold. There's a big difference between like food and poison and very many other polar opposites, okay? But non-duality is the concept that not every aspect of consciousness is heading towards greater levels of organization. As I've shown you throughout this semester so far, there is an energy pathway that comes outward from this central convergence point and circulates into physical embodiment. And that's where you are now. And then it returns back to the source that emanated it. And that's a beautiful, complete circuit and everything about the way that reality is supposed to be structured. That creates a sustainable, toroidal, balanced, it's called a standing wave. And a standing wave has coherence and longevity because the same amount is going out as going in. And that's also what I mean when I talk about the tone of unconditional love. Unconditional love does not mean you can do anything and I will still love you and say that that is okay. That is not what unconditional love is. All right. So throw that out the window. That is definitely erroneous thinking that is worthy of being thrown out the window because that's how it is anthropomorphically portrayed. And then if you set boundaries, then something will say like, what's wrong? Like, aren't you loving me? Don't you love me? And none of that is fair. So unconditional love is a balanced frequency. Sorry, Chiki's just playing back here, and that's why you might hear her. Okay, good. It's a balanced frequency of what you send out and what you receive. And that is what sustains reality. So if you give somebody else $5 and they give $5 back to you, that is a sustainable economy. If you are continually giving someone else $5, at a certain point, you will go broke because you do not have an infinite number of dollars, and they will be very, very wealthy. And that is not imbalance. And that is something that cannot be sustained. So the concept of your consciousness emerging from the potentials of the singularity point here and emerging into physicality form is part of the journey. And then the other part of the journey is refinery of consciousness, refinery of soul characteristics. And that stuff that is supposed to go back to energy goes back to energy. But there's other stuff that is not supposed to go back to energy. And then you're like, well, what are we supposed to do with it? Send it to entropy. And that is a huge aspect of what this shape represents. So arbitrarily, because this is still a simplification of something that is very complex, I have one point that is a point of energy. And I have one point that is a point of entropy. But this is a symbolic point of entropy. Entropy is actually a very, very large place in many, many different places, even though it's not really a place of physical third-dimensional space-time. So it's not something where there's an address where we can send a letter, but it is a catch-all area for all of the unstuff that non-exists. So please just comprehend that it's a big place, bigger than one tiny point, but that this singularity here is one tiny point. All right. And that might seem out of balance. Like, you mean to tell me, like, wait a minute, I'm angry and inflamed, Aurora. You don't want to tell me that the stuff that does exist, an infinite amount of infinite everything exists in one tiny little convergence point, and then all the stuff that doesn't exist exists in all of the other space around that. I'm like, yes, that is exactly what is going on. So let's draw a picture of it in order to depict this. I think it will help your rational mind to comprehend this. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. I pressed the wrong buttons. I'm flustered. Okay, let's get going. Because this is also going to relate to the concept of going through non-duality and drawing all this out and then realizing that you're one cell in a much, much larger body. So here is, let's say, singularity or the Big Bang. And let's make it bigger down. You know me, I have to draw things properly. All right. Well, and then let's make this is where you are in time right now. Because this is an ever expanding bubble of time. And the Big Bang is a flawed proposal. So please recognize that even working with the Big Bang is working with a conceptual, symbolic structure, not something that is to be taken totally literally. But we're going to use this in order to draw parallels between what you're presently experiencing in, let's say, the consensual generalities of human consciousness, like how humans view the world, humanistic worldview, and where you need to go in terms of multidimensionality and non-duality. So first, everybody's thinking like, there's only one world. I'm this cell of the universe, and there's only one world. Here is where everything started. And just like a record, it spiraled outward, right? And then it got to this area where I'm wiggling right now, and that's the present moment now. So in this diagram, if we go in this direction, we're going back into deep antiquity. And if we could go in this direction, we would be going into the future. But according to present human science, where I am scribbling does not even exist yet. This is nothingness. Present human science, not what I am saying, but present human science says there is nothing beyond this present moment now. The truth is that where I just scribbled is a field of pure potential. That would be considered the fifth dimension and higher, and we'll go through exactly what that is and what that means. And those are the potentials of the future. So time is not just like a line where we start here and then move forward into the future. And that all of these, if you live here, that all of these future things are set in stone. They're not set in stone. There's actually this timeline and this timeline and this version of reality and this version of reality and this version of reality. And we need to talk today about the concept of what is the quality. Let me change colors so I can emphasize this. What is the quality of these parallel and peripheral realities? Are they all the same? And who writes them? And are they arbitrary? And the answer is they are not all the same. Sometimes when we wonder who writes them, I'm being a little bit PG-13 right now, but you're like, sometimes we're like, who writes this crap? Like, who is the author who wrote this crappy one that I'm highlighting here in red, that bad stuff happens there? Maybe you get run over by a truck or something like that. It's like, who writes this crap? And this very, very much relates to the concept of flying rainbow lasagna. I hope you can see it in the thumbnail. If not, I'll hold it up later. Because with flying rainbow lasagna, you can rearrange these potentials because these are all genetic potentials. So the timeline that you're on and peripheral possible timelines and potential futures are all written in your DNA. Your DNA is a bridge of light between yourself and time. And rearranging your DNA means rearranging your future. And also, yes, you can retroactively heal and rearrange the past, but don't get too complex in your questing of your mind yet. Focusing on the future, because what we're talking about is, I always say, you can rearrange any book into a masterpiece. Like, let's say you have a random book that is the telephone directory, even though I know people don't have telephone directories anymore. So I'll say like a random technical manual, whatever, for your refrigerator. But wait, people don't get technical manuals anymore. So a Bed Bath and Beyond catalog, something, okay? Something that you are familiar with that is a small disposable pamphlet can become great literature if you can rearrange the letters. If you have every letter of the alphabet and you can rearrange it, you can turn it into a masterpiece. That is what flying rainbow lasagna allows you to do. But first, you must master certain concepts. One of the first concepts is that there is not nothing around here, although there are areas of entropy, and those are places where no thing exists. But now I got to draw this for you because this is a cell of your body. All right, cell membrane, nucleus, right? Now we're using this analogy to comprehend it's just like your universe concept. but you know you're not the only cell in a body unless you are a unicellular organism. So if you are a multicellular organism, then here's another cell. We're just going to make it simple. I made a black dot in the middle instead of a purple dot. But here's another cell out here, another universe, and another universe, and another universe. And each one of these universes corresponds to a different timeline, a different level of reality, a different possibility structure of what can happen as you're moving through time. So although the present scientific viewpoint is that of a universe and a unicellular animal, the true multicellular viewpoint and multidimensional higher self viewpoint, when you achieve non-duality, is to comprehend you're all of this stuff where I'm scribbling, going crazy here. You're all of it. You're all of that stuff. But you don't necessarily identify with all of it because these peripheral storylines are not the real you. They are filler, or they're you when you're lost. They're you when you don't know what the heckaroo you are doing. And one of the things I'd like to do is to clarify, as I read through my notes and then as I make a presentation to you each year, I always want to make sure that I'm clarifying. One of the things that I take issue from is emphasized in my notes. I'll read it. I make ridiculous squinty faces. Sorry, scrolling. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I'm going to pause for a moment. Thank you for allowing me time to locate what I wanted to find in my notes. What I'm trying, I'm going to look down because I got to read it here. Okay. So what I write in my notes from over 10 years ago is underlined and emphasized. You run the entire spectrum of experience from axe murderer to avatar of goodness. I do not agree with that. And that is a misrepresentation. Let me put this down safely and then I'll rant. Incoming rant. Okay, good. And I'm going to drink some tea. Gird your loins. That means get ready. Not everyone has the innate potentials to be an axeman. That is erroneous. That is not truthful. So what I'm talking about is when we look at this quadrant of time and we look at this central core timeline and path of least likelihood as your most evolved self. You, when you are most divinely connected, most perfect, I won't say most loving. I will say like where every action that you're doing is totally in alignment with the musical score of the cosmos. And that doesn't necessarily mean being like a peaceful person wearing all white robes on a mountaintop. Like you can be a fiery, wrathful avatar of cosmic justice. All right. It means that you are doing what needs to be done in each moment for the cosmic symphony. And you never play one note wrong. All right. So qualitatively, the qualities of who you are as a character on that timeline are the characteristics that bring you forward into eternal life. So again, it does not mean being passive, wimpy, wanky, or allowing violence to happen to you or others. Sometimes it does mean fighting back and protecting yourself. Please understand that. Sometimes it means avoiding danger or avoiding non-optimum environments that would reduce your longevity. But sometimes it means fighting back against things that are trying to kill you. Sometimes it also means proactively, aggressively, or offensively striking out before they can harm you. Really think about that as a valid aspect of what might be your recipe of divine ascended mastery. Because ascended masters, how it's presented in the world of New Age or spiritual seekers or mythological admiration societies. They're presented as kind of like soft, fluffy ascended masters who are kind of like, I love you, and that they would not protect you or protect others. And so your path to ascended mastery doesn't necessarily look like what the propaganda tells you. That's one of the first things. You must sculpt yourself and create your own perfect, unique recipe for what ascended mastery looks like for you within your cultural context. Because right now, like you're in a technological cultural context. So you have to deal with like you're Find My iPhone or something like that. And masters of 2000 years ago never had to deal with their Geico bills or their iPhone or anything like that. So you must update and do your behavior in the context of what the difficulties that you presently face. But all of that is separate from the concept of what happens on the edges of this diagram where there are personality distortions. So the further you get away from the central core timeline, the more distorted you get, the less of your true self you are. And what does it look like when people become less of their true self? So this morning, as I was going through my notes, and again, apologies for not getting stuff out late last night. Sometimes I fall asleep before I get my emails done. As I was going through my concepts for sharing for today, I realized that not everybody acts the same way when they're intoxicated or under the influence of some distortion, biomolecule or frequency, or even, strange magnetics that might be coming from above, or solar wind or whatever. Anything that's a destabilization, intoxication, something that makes you not yourself. Not everybody acts the same way, okay? Because like you might not have ever had the experience of drinking too much alcohol or becoming intoxicated in that way or whatever. But let's just say not everybody has the same underlying sub or unconscious motivations. Like when some people drink alcohol, they might become angry and violent. When some people drink alcohol and when their self defenses or self-regulation is down, then they might become effusively happy, very huggy. And these are two very different things. So one person, you take off the mask and they're angry, bitter, cruel, and violent. One person, you take off the mask and they are soft, lovey, huggy, or maybe some person might be weepy or, overly emotional, all right? They're not all the same. So for me to say in my notes from over 10 years ago that everybody has the potentials in the spectrum of their innate being, of either being a beautiful ascended master, or if you distort them enough out on the edges, an axe murderer, that's not truthful. And this really, really relates to my pieces of paper of bad news that I sometimes hold up. Some of these things that have been going on in our world that distort human behavior, much like an intoxicant. But not everybody acts the same way. In this free-for-all, like a barroom brawl that is broken out right now in our world, like there's no oversight. There's no lunch lady monitoring the children on the playground. There's no cosmic, cops that are watching. There's very little repercussions for people doing bad stuff. All right, so it's a free-for-all to smash and grab, do whatever you want. Some people are doing whatever they want, which is being very cruel, trying to control others, trying to harm others. Some people, in the absence of a control structure, literally become axe murderers or serial killers. Like if there were no consequences, some people are so pathological on an innate level of who they are that they would, without good reason, hurt or dismember other people, or mutilate innocent creatures, or mutilate the time field. And that's its own level of criminality. So when I think about that, I think about like CRISPR, genetic modification, other levels of what I call a cosmic crime, but that humans are mostly so, I want to say stupid, but so ignorant and unevolved that these technicians are working with DNA when they have no idea what they're doing. This is definitely time toaster technology, giving firecrackers to children, people working with things that they have no idea about the harmful repercussions that they can make. That's why it's giving firecrackers to children. So like this thing actually blows up and hurts people. Like, yeah, messing with DNA actually blows up and hurts people. And just in the same way that you might look back on the folly of previous generations that caused some type of profound pollution, like whatever, like some kind of nuclear waste that was buried in the 1960s. And you're like, oh, that's great. That'll just take like 25 million years to clean up. Good job, previous generation. Future generations will look back on this generation with the genetic pollution that happened on various levels. And they will say, like, good job, previous generation, at effing it up for all of us, PG-13. So very, very not good stuff. but not everybody contains those potentials of distortion to become like a serial killer, a maniac, whatever, a megalomaniac, Genghis Khan, any of like the famous torturers of human history, Torquemada. Not everybody contains those potentials. And what is happening right now in your world is really a litmus test or a type of opportunity to express the truth of who you are under extreme duress, under extreme circumstances. You could say that what is in the world right now in terms of frequency pollution and genetic modification is a type of intoxication. And some people are going off bananas. Some people are going so cuckoo and they are acting very, very badly, but not everybody is. Some people are attempting to continue to be good and continue to help other people and continue to act in a righteous way and continue to hold up a sense of justice. Like you get what you deserve, you send out good things, you deserve good things, protecting the innocent, a set of value system. So again, if you give 100% of the population alcohol and everybody's defenses go down and some people become, like violent losers and some people do not everybody is the same. So I'm trying to get across that in the potentials of the time field, not everybody has the same potentials. No, you do not all have the potential to become a serial killer, an axe murderer, or whatever, a politician as bad as, any of these profoundly evil politicians. I want to say like Hillary Clinton or whatever. You will never become like her. Why not? Because that's not something that's an innate characteristic, that is a part of you. And I think that that's really important. So in previous semesters, what I've used is the example of Adolf Hitler. We're having a fun conversation today about some of like history's madmen. Hooray! So let's talk about Hitler because, on some of the peripheral timelines over here, he was an art student. And the mythology goes that he got rejected from art school. And like any good art student, he was like, well, since I can't have a career as an artist, I guess I'll just go into mass murder instead. I think that sounds like a great solution. Instead, if you can't follow your dream, just become a mass murderer. Sounds great. Not everybody has that potential inside of them. And it is hugely erroneous and maybe too compassionately soft and squashy to be like, oh, like if only Hitler hadn't been rejected and made to feel bad, then he would have been a completely different, a better person. Or let's use another great one of history's famous madmen, Charles Manson. He, on some of his peripheral timelines over here, he was trying to be a musician. He was trying to be kind of like the Monkees. Remember that kind of, band, kind of Beatles-esque takeoff band in the 1960s? Yeah, he was trying to be like a mop top, whatever, mod musician. And clearly his career did not take off. And so he took a different road into mass murder. Hooray. I'm being, hopefully you can tell, extremely sarcastic and facetious in case you don't have emotional perception. I do not think that Hitler or Charles Manson are good people at all. I think they are profoundly evil people. And I think that the profoundly evil potentials that reside inside of them are not the potentials that reside inside of you, the good people of this class. And that's why you're in my class. That's why I'm so grateful that I'm happy to be connected to you. I think through this class and through different, groups that I run in my dance class and everything, I'm connected to the good people in this world. So please know that not everybody is the same, not everybody is equitable, and not all of these stories of potential are written in the same way. That is crucial because I think that it was far too idealistic and simplistic how I wrote my notes from 10 years ago. I think I was trying to get across the sense that any one of us can become distorted. Like think about if the worst things happened in your life, like if you, lost your family, lost all of your money, ended up with no resources, like what could happen to you? Like you could be living in a cardboard box, but how would you respond? Would you be like, taking a lot of drugs? Would you be stealing from people? Would you stab people? Would you violate people? What are your values? What are your boundaries? Or would you like get a job mopping a floor, and like try to work your way up and try to fix your life? And I would say for you guys, not the first approach. I would say that you guys would not become totally debased violent maniacs that you would probably, try to fix and heal the situation that had devolved in your life. But some people are violent maniacs. And I think this is really important. And part of what I did 10 years ago in my original notes, I was a bit maybe idealistic and also trying to emphasize, the dark peripheral potentials of a distorted person. But also through my experiences of the past 5 years here, being exposed to so much distortion technology, I have witnessed and experienced the qualitative differences across the population. And not everybody has acted the same way under the same levels of duress. I'm going to have to use a little bit of oblique language to talk about this, but so everybody is here on this planet and is being exposed to the same pieces of magical fairy dust that fall from the sky, right? It falls upon everyone. There is the same inundation through the atmosphere and largely through food and water that comes inside of everyone the same way, but not everybody responded to it in the same way. As those things came into the human biology and started to assemble and afflict people's consciousnesses, not everybody responded the same way. Some people tried to fight against it. They were like, hey, get out of my mind. I don't like you, magical pixie dust. And some people said, ooh, magical pixie dust. I think I'd like some more. Like they want to sprinkle it on top of their breakfast cereal or whatever, ingested like some kind of drug use. They liked the magical pixie dust and they aligned with it and they aligned with its values and they even aligned with the sense. So we're talking about now like a transhumanist agenda. Not everybody, this is it. Not everybody is responding the same way to the same levels of consciousness affliction and distortion in our world. And I cannot justify the affliction, but I can say that it's an amazing, I don't know what you would want to call it, like level playing field. Like everybody's exposed to the same thing. Not everybody reacts in the same way. I would never experiment on humanity in this way. But when you look at humanity as a population, you're like, that is interesting because not 100% of the people did this. Some of the people did this, but some of the people did this. And you are the people in my class that did this. And then the people that did this, like, I don't want to have anything to do with them, to say the truth. And that also is like my message when I came here as Aurora 24 years ago. I offered it to humanity. Kind of like being like, I'll talk to anyone, literally. Like I would talk to people at the grocery store. I would talk to people at any time that I could about flying rainbow lasagna. But now I am more just selective about who I talk to flying rainbow lasagna about, who I offer it to. Because I think that there are some people that have an innate quality that is going to entropy, that they are a set of characteristics that is not evolving. So in this refinery of consciousness, stuff comes from the source and then it kind of balloons and gets diluted into materiality. So we contain a fraction of the original message or pure signal that comes from the source where we were emanated from. But then there's a lot of filler. The filler is the periphery, the stuff around the edges, the not real you. And then our goal in achieving that perfect timeline of inner mastery is cutting away everything that's not the real you and returning to just the core of who you really are. And that's what makes that reconnection. You want in your mind to say makes the journey home, but really it is a reconnection, because when I say journey home, it makes you think like this isn't your home, but this is your home. But it's been a very screwed up place and you got to clean up. But that's this big, because I don't want you to think like you got to escape in order to quote unquote go home. No, in fact, what happens if you want to know is you maintain the trajectory of your biological container when you make that reconnection. So you've come circulated into physicality and then returned to the destination, which, the source, which is your destination. Every moment that you were embedded in time remains as an indelible, pristine moment. And it's really important for you to be there. That is your real estate in time. That's important stuff. Like imagine, and this is not part of my notes, but it's important for me to share this with you. Imagine that you build a house in time. You live in that house. That house is your body. And then at a certain point, you are in a different place in time, but you still own that house. It's still your property. And you still have a foothold or a portal or an entryway into reality through having that property. It is essential to have physical real estate in the world. This is why I am here as Aurora, as opposed to just an abstract, non-embodied frequency, because you got to do certain things to accomplish certain things. I started to get very silly. I want to say, like, you got to have some real estate, kid. But to accomplish certain things, must have a physical body and a foothold in reality. But perhaps your concept is that upon death or ascension, which would be like, it's some form of escapism, that your physical body becomes irrelevant. Like, throw that old dead corpse away. I don't need that anymore. I'm a butterfly now, or I'm a this or that now. But your body matters. In fact, I don't want to put too much pressure on you. Every single moment of your body matters. Every single moment from your birth all the way up through all of these moments on your ascended mastery timeline matters. That is why I say you have to play a perfect game or play a perfect symphony. Every single decision, intention, choice, expression, all those things matter. And again, I don't want to put too much pressure on you because you're going to wake up in the morning. You're going to be like, should I wear the blue dress? Or should I wear the pink dress? Like, this decision really matters. Which timeline am I going to be on? So don't go crazy like that through your rationalism. That is why you have to activate your higher faculties to guide you through these events, because it is not something that is a one size fits all pronouncement. It's not conformity. It's different and unique for everyone. It's different for every circumstance. It's different for every day. One day the blue dress is the right one. One day the red dress is the right one. There's not, it's always going to be changing. And it's not about moral absolutism, which is to say, it is always right to wear the blue dress, or it is always right to wear the pink dress. Sometimes it's right to do this, but sometimes it's right to do this. And it really does depend upon the context that you are within. So when you eat your food, sometimes it is correct to eat like pineapple, and sometimes it is correct to eat a chocolate eclair, and sometimes it is correct to eat fried chicken. Like, these are three very different substances, and you have to honor what is the correctness for your appetite, your cosmic appetite in each moment. And that is why, so a lot of flying rainbow lasagna and a lot of these practices involve awakening your light body. What we talked about last week in class was mastering the mind. And those are mastering different techniques to be able to increase the bank account in your heart, to get more energy of unconditional love, truthfulness, so that way you can book time on the telescope and actually see your path instead of guessing and wondering, should I wear this dress or this dress? When you have enough money in the bank, you're able to activate your time telescope, you can see, and you can be like, if I choose to make this choice, then I'm going over here. But if I make this choice, I'm going over here. So I'm making this choice and going over here. All right. So you will never be penalized for the mistakes that you made when you were blinded against your willpower. Humanity has been blinded against your willpower, and you're trying like anything right now in order to regain your eyesight so that you can see again. And when we're talking about regain your eyesight, I'm not talking about your optical eyesight of your physical presence. I'm talking about your inner eye. So now let me just take a sip of tea, and we'll talk about transcending reality by activating your third eye. And I should read comments too. And Joyce says, thank you, Cosmic Cleaning Ladies on the scene. That's me, exactly. And I'll also tell you the cosmic cleanup is finite. It's not infinite. And so I'm here with a very, very specific mission, but not infinite scrubbing, because that is so choreful. So I'm here to do this for a certain amount of effortfulness, and bring it to a completion so that then we can have a completely qualitatively different experience. Because like, I'm an artist, and you cannot get bogged down in always cleaning the studio. If you're going to scrub your studio with like a toothbrush and like remove every molecule of dirt before you do a project, like, your life is going to be miserable. You got to clean stuff up so that you can do the fun, expansive, creative stuff. And we will do the fun, expansive, creative stuff. Okay, so now let's talk about what is your pineal gland and what is your inner eye and what are your higher faculties. Your pineal gland is an actual physical feature that is in the midbrain of your physical body. It is analogous to an energy field that is emitted. You can imagine this is like emitted from my pineal gland that is non-physical, and that is your highest mind. And your higher mind is not the same as your solar plexus. We've talked about that quote from Carlos Castaneda: the implants at the level of yellow, the predator's mind, and the intentionally obfuscatory. I don't even know how to say that word, but to obscure the view, the blockades that were put in at the level of your intellect. This is very, very different than your intellect. This is your true mind. So your higher faculties and your ability to see through time and activating non-dualistic vision has to do with utilizing your true mind. And this mind, I'll also say, is very similar to the dolphin's mind. So I talked last week also about how, in terms of brain size and convolutions, many other animals in the world have amazing brains. Like dragonflies have an amazing brain, but it is largely in the visual cortex. So they have definitely a source type of intelligence that is the intelligence to be able to navigate, time, like a room, now to navigate a place very, very quickly. They have a lot of processing power to be able to see where they're going and go very fast, but not necessarily a lot of cognitive power about like conceptual worldviews or language and other things like that. So we'll put dragonflies aside, but definitely elephants, definitely blue whales. And let's talk about dolphins. So dolphins, in terms of their brain volume, is not necessarily more than humans, but in terms of surface area, they have more convolutions. So they've got more connection points and actually can exhibit greater levels of intelligence than humanity. Dolphins also do not sleep in the way that humans do. Humans, when you rest at night, have both of your hemispheres go quiet at one time, and then you go non-verbal and non-conscious, and that's how you restore your chakras and get reconnected to the divine world, because you got these blockades at the level of yellow. So you just have to turn off your brain to be able to actually get restored so you don't die. Because if you don't sleep, like, you will slowly die. But dolphins do not just float there sleeping. That's a pretty vulnerable thing to do out in the ocean. So what they do is they sleep one hemisphere at a time. Like, their left hemisphere goes to sleep and their right hemisphere is awake. And then after a few moments, they switch it around. And the other side of the brain rests, and then this side is up. So in their world, if this is the surface of the water, they jump up above the surface of the water and then down below, and then up above and down below. They're doing that with their mind. With their mind, they are awake, asleep, awake, asleep, awake, asleep in a rhythmic pattern. And that awake, asleep relates to the concept of flying rainbow lasagna, non-duality. When you bring together formerly divergent realms, what you're really doing is connecting your inner world of ephemeral emotions, concepts, feelings, potentials with your outer manifested reality. So when you start to do this flying rainbow lasagna, non-dualistic experience embodiment, what it feels like is being in a living dream, where your reality becomes much more malleable. Instead of, in human consciousness, the bifurcation between waking and sleeping is severe. When you are asleep, anything can happen. It's a fluid realm where, like, 1 minute, like, you're sitting in a rocking chair, and the next minute, like, you're on an airplane. Like, there's no connection between these two events. Seemingly weird random things can happen, or like you pick up the phone and it's an alligator, weird things happen. It's not a reality that hangs together. And also, you sleep and you wake up and that reality disappears. Poof, it's out of existence. But like, when you go to sleep, like, your house is your house, and when you wake up in the morning, your house is still your house. It hasn't disappeared or turned into an alligator. There is a consistency to material events, and the rational mind ties them together and holds it into a sense of causality, why things happen. And so there's two totally different distinctions. ephemeral, weird, malleable dream world where everything is crazy, and then normal life, right? But when you start to do lasagna, these two worlds, complementary in a very positive way, combine together their flavors. Your dreaming world becomes much more lucid and structured. You remember who you are in the dreaming world, and you create structures or have experiences there that have continuity over time. That means it has staying power. It doesn't just evaporate like an ordinary dream. And also, your physical reality during the day becomes much more malleable, much more influenced, much more changeable. You might walk through your town and you've walked through your town 10,000 times before, but all of a sudden you're like, that's a whole new building. I never saw that before. When did that come forward? And then, don't make up a whole story and be like, I guess it's a Mandela effect, blah, blah. Like, just don't make up a story, but just recognize these things. It is the changeability of our structure. So that is actually a truthful experience. You're actually supposed to be recognizing the way that your inner world of dreams and passions has a huge influence on your outer world. The distinction between two separate worlds has been very artificial. And that's the worldview of rationality and materialism. And the worldview of materialism, which came out of the spiritual and what we would say mythological, superstitious viewpoints pre-1600s in like Europe. That was a time when people were not rational and they just made stuff up, crazy explanations about reality. They're like, somebody got sick because a cat walked in front of them. That made them get sick. Like, that's not why they got sick. Or a witch looked at them. Like, that is not why they got sick. You understand? So people made up crazy rational stories that were not rational at all. And then Sir Isaac Newton and a bunch of other rationalists came along and they said, let's fix this. Let's just make up stories about stuff that we can actually prove. And if you can't prove that that cat actually made that person sick, I don't think that really happened. And that actually helped us in our world because many, many innocent people stopped getting killed and innocent cats because they weren't actually hurting people. It was actually tiny bugs that they couldn't see until they invented microscopes. And then they could see them. And then they're like, that's what's making people sick. That's what's making people sick. Exactly. You guys can give me a whole thing in the comments about like germ theory, viral theory, how it's all wrong and everything like that. But we'll just table that conversation for a long time. But let's just say the invention of lenses made it possible to see one-celled organisms, made it possible for people to comprehend that it's not superstitions that are making people sick and get the plague. And also to learn about basic hygiene, just washing your hands, killing those microbes is going to help out a lot against the plague. All right. But post-rationalism is quantum science. And I'll talk about this more extensively in one of my teachings later in the semester. The concept that your mind and your viewpoint absolutely influence reality, but not in an arbitrary or unformed way. But you start to recognize in the early 1900s how the way that you're looking at the world influences physical matter. So the rationalist viewpoint, you're like, hey, like the room is the room. The wall is the wall. Doesn't matter whether you're looking at it. And also, hey, kid, I'm chomping my cigar. That ditch ain't gonna dig itself. Get out there and do it. Like very practical viewpoint of the world. But as you get into quantum science, you're like, well, the wall looks like the wall, the room looks like the room. But if I'm not looking at it, maybe it doesn't look like that. Maybe it's Schrodinger's room. Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe it half exists. Maybe it semi-exists. Maybe it exists in a different form until I look at it. And that's a lot closer to what is truthful. What is truthful is that you're in a sea of uncollapsed waveforms. This is what is known as the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension must never be conflated with a form of propaganda that calls it 5D and the 5D smoothie shop and how cool and fruity it's going to be when everyone's in 5D. 5D is largely a psyop that has been perpetrated against humanity to give you artificially elevated feelings through electrocution of areas of your mind with stuff like this to make you think that you're having an ascension, but it is a false ascension. 5D is a formless level of reality. So there is not a smoothie shop there. When we think about time, we recognize that there are timelines that would be akin to French breads. My fingers are made out of bread now, everyone. Okay, these are long, skinny French breads, right? And you start here at birth, and then here's the bread, and then here's where you die. And then you cut the slices, and that's moments of time. But the fifth dimension is not like a shelf full of many, many layers of French bread. The fifth dimension is where you have flour and a mixing giant, mixing container and water and yeast and salt, the potentials for making bread or dough. And then when you have that dough and you apply the ovens in front of your eyes, you look at dough, the unformed potentials of reality, it cooks that dough into a moment that you may then experience. That is the ultimate in truthfulness, and that is actually your partnership with divine consciousness. When you use your ovens of observership in partnership with divinity, in the sea of uncollapsed waveforms or the uncooked bread dough of time, you are co-creating moments of time. And that is the ultimate in mastery. So mastery does not mean poof, like you disappear from existence. It's like mastering the piano does not mean that you all of a sudden poof away and stop playing the piano. You are still in reality. You get good at being in reality. You get good at baking bread out of dough. You get good at making the right bread out of the right moments of dough. Really what you're doing is caressing time with your viewpoint or with your observership. So where you place your attention and how long you place your attention there. And when I say caressing, it's your worldview, how you look at the world and how your mind touches on time, forms time. Big part of making bread. And again, I have not ever really made bread, although I have made pizza dough. But a lot of things that I talk to you about are like theoreticals for me. But I hear that making bread involves a lot of like kneading, stretching, and pulling and everything like that. And that is all an art form. That's something they do it commercially. They're like, put the stuff in the mixer and then you will mix it for 45 seconds and then we'll take it out and we'll do it over here. But when you make bread for real, why it's really an art form is because it's about the tactile sensation of a person actually feeling the texture of the dough and being like, this needs to get mixed around more. This needs to get shaped like this. This needs to get mushed around like this. Now it's bread. Now it's food. Now it's something we can actually eat. And it's different every time, because the texture of the flour and how much water you have to add and what are the atmospheric conditions and everything, it's actually not quantifiable. It is different every time. So real bakers recognize that. Like real bakers know, like you never try to bake a meringue pie on a rainy, cloudy day. You know why? Because your meringue is going to weep. It's going to like sink on down because there's a ton of humidity in the air. Right? So if the air is really humid, you have to adjust your recipe. Also, if it's really, really dry, you have to adjust your recipe. If you live in Denver, Colorado, you have to adjust your recipe. You know why? Because you're at high elevation and all of your boiling points and everything like that changes. So there's an art form to physical making of dough to be able to make real bread as opposed to like inedible, horror crackers, right? Failures. Same thing that you could also call that burnt cookies of reality. And I have a whole very fun, cute story time that I did, I think maybe way back in 2017 that I still have on my YouTube. And that's why I maintain my consistency of my YouTube channel here so that you can scroll back and find it, the burnt cookies of reality. And that's where I use this analogy very, very beautifully to be able to talk about when watches and time, measurement of time was created. And that was like, the 1800s or so when watches and grandfather clocks and even clocks in the central clock tower of a town became normal and time was measured more accurately. Human consciousness changed because it used to be that your human consciousness is much more fluid in moving from moment to moment. And you might say to someone like, I'll meet you at noon in the town square, but you didn't have a watch to be able to tell whether you were 1 minute late, 2 minutes late, 5 minutes late, 26 seconds late. You would just kind of know like the sun is up in the sky. I'm kind of there at the right time. But everything really changed when people could have pocket watches and when there was a town clock that would tell you whether you were late or early. And there began to be a structuring in the mind. And the truth is that time is subjective. It is not like cookie cutters. Every moment does not last the same amount of time. And you know this. Ever had to have some kind of a painful root canal or medical procedure, like that pain, that 1 minute of pain lasted much longer than like 1 minute of eating an ice cream cone, where you're like, wow, or doing something fun, like whatever, jumping on a trampoline. Things that are fun, you can do for a long time, and it feels like no time has passed. What do you say? Time flies while you're having fun. Everybody knows this subjective flow of time. So burnt cookies happens when we are forced to put an excessive amount of attention on certain events in time. And you're lavishing heat, attention, ovens on certain things, overcooking them, over focusing on them. And then other things undercooked, not enough attentiveness, not enough attention. And that is, it's part of the domestication process. It's part of the blockades at the level of the intellect. And it's part of what you need to transcend in order to reach that central core timeline and return to your true divine state. And it's also part of what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a tool to achieve. Because with Flying Rainbow Lasagna, because I was just telling you about like the circle of time around the Big Bang, and what we're doing is combining the inside and the outside. So we need to look at my drawing that are laboriously prepared for everyone and talk about the little ant. The little ant that's on the inside of the time bubble. Okay, hold on 1 moment. I'm going to hydrate. Thank you. Drinking tea. Mate. Thank you for that. All right. This is the one. This is the file that, like, I have it all meticulously prepared, and then somehow it mysteriously escaped away, and then I had to like find it again. Do not know why that happens. Okay, enough complaining. So let's just envision that this bubble over here where I'm tracing the edge, this is a time bubble, even though I know I've got 4 over here, but we're just going to use that one as a representative example, right? And so like this would be the Big Bang or the singularity at the center, and then time moves forward in this direction, and then where you have the bubble over here, that's the present moment now. And let's envision that in this time bubble, you have a little ant. And I'm just going to draw like a little squiggly body. And here's these little antennas sticking up. And here's his little legs. That's a terrible leg. I'm trying to make like halfway decent because he should be inside of the bubble. So here's his little legs inside of the bubble. All right. So he lives inside of the bubble. Now let's draw a little ant that lives on the outside of the bubble. Like, Aurora, you just told me that the outside doesn't exist. It's just a field of time potentials. I'm like, that is correct. It's just a field of time potentials, but let's just say that an ant lives there. Thank you for the moment. The key point is that these 2 little creatures are not able to communicate. This realm over here is separated by a time boundary from this realm over here, and they are not able to communicate and share information. And when you stretch this time bubble and bring this vortex in and this vortex in, and you do that, I should draw from every direction. From here, you get that 4 vortex shape, which is what I'm holding up in the thumbnail, that red sculpture. You get that 4 vortex shape, but you still have the inherent bifurcation of the inside of the time bubble versus the outside of the time bubble. Just think about that. We're going to stick with the sense of duality, thing versus thing. And then I'm going to teach you about your eyesight. All right. So the inside of the time bubble versus the outside of the time bubble. Let's also talk about your inner world, your dreaming state versus your outer world, your rational mind. And we can talk about other things too, like the neurological signals inside of your brain versus the other people, things, and objects that are in the world that you perceive outside of your brain. Okay. Now I'm going to stop share for a moment. We're going to come back to this image, but now we got to talk about your eyesight, physical eyesight, because so much of your viewpoint of the world has been influenced by the shape of your physical biological container. So you're in a human body, and your human body, most people have two eyes and have binocular vision. And the way that your whole entire brain and system of perception has developed and your worldview has developed has been as an outgrowth of having two eyes. And when you add the third eye, the inner eye of time, that is when you transcend duality. First, let's talk about duality, what it is. It's a thing versus a thing, but it's also perceiving through contrast. So the first thing is depth perception. You have two eyes, and what your brain does is takes an image from this eye and takes an image from this eye, and then it goes into your optic centers that are kind of at the back of your brain, and your brain, your mind, your perception, knits those two images together and does some pretty amazing, complex mathematical wizardry. So if you ever think you're not good at math, you're very good at math. It's maybe not the math that they traumatized you with in third grade with flashcards. Can we outlaw flashcards? All right, good. But you're weaving together those two complementary, slightly distinct viewpoints so that your brain can make some crucial calculations how far away things are, right? So when you're a little tiny kid, like I don't know if you guys can remember what it was like to be a little tiny kid, but you had to learn to coordinate, and it was very hard because when you went to like reach out to get your juice or your milk or your baba or whatever, like you couldn't tell it, is it over here? Is it this far away? Is it this far away? And then when you got it, you couldn't tell like how far is this thing away from my mouth? And you spilled things a lot, and your mom and your dad had to clean it up. And they're like, like he's 2 years old. He's not coordinated yet. It takes time for you to develop this complex system of perception and coordination. Think about also when you learned how to ride a bicycle, or maybe when you first learned to drive a car. And I had this experience in adulthood as Aurora. I had to learn like, how far away is another car from me? This is important stuff so you don't crash. Or when you're parking, you're getting into a parking space, you're like, how far away is this thing from this thing? And is this thing from this thing? This is all very complex brain calculations that you have to do to be able to be healthy, happy, and survive in our world. This is basic survival stuff. So because of the practicalities of needing to survive in the world, we learn about thing versus thing, and your brain habituates to thing versus thing. And it's deeper than that. It also goes to the retinal cells. So in your eye at the back, you have the retina, and the retina is photosensitive paper. Now I know no one uses cameras with film in it anymore. Aurora, you're some kind of a relic from another, I want to say another dimension. I am, but also from another century. I'm like, I know, and I only know Pac-Man. But let's remember when cameras used film, and we're not digital. So you had a piece of film that is covered with this photosensitive coating that responds to light. And that is what your retinas do. But what retinal cells do is, I will gesture for you with my hand. When you have these cells, you have one cell at the middle that is like my pen, then you have the other cells around it. And when a photon comes in and it stimulates that one cell, that cell that gets stimulated jumps up like this. And it says to your brain, this much light just came in, and these cells do not stimulate. And it is the difference between this stuff and this stuff that your brain calculates. Again, complex supercomputer in your eyeballs all day long. You're a genius. Just claim it, please. The contrast between stimulation and non-stimulation, constantly calculating that. What that comes out to in the level of experience is light versus dark. So when you look at my face on this screen, you will see areas of light where I'm putting my pen. Light, 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 light. Then you will see areas of dark. Dark, 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 dark. And it's the contrast. Like this is a perfect example, the side of my face here. Light versus dark. And you start to look at it and you're like, I think there's a person there. This is the person, and then this is not the person. Or if you, whatever you're looking at me as a person, you're like person, person, person versus background, not person. So when you were a little tiny child, you had to figure this out. When you were first born, you might not even remember this. but you did not know what in the world was going on. You were looking at things and everything looked blurry and was confusing. And all you knew was like, you saw something and then something happened and then they put something in your mouth and then you felt, stuff going down your throat and you didn't know what was going on. It takes time when you're a tiny baby to be able to start to comprehend and create the brain connections to understand what is a face, what does a person look like. And at a certain time, it might be like after a couple of months, but your eyesight coalesces and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm looking at a face. I'm looking at a person, face versus nothing. You start to be able to recognize the person versus the background. And same thing with playing in your crib. Little kids touch themselves, they bite their own hand or their own foot, and then they touch their stuffed animals in the crib and they're like, I feel this is me. And then I feel this other stuff around me, not me. And they're constantly making a boundary and distinction, me versus the world. This is appropriate. You need to do this for survival because you know what? You got to take care of your body. You don't have to take care of your stuffed animal. It's an inanimate object and it's also not you. This is the foundational distinction of duality, figuring out basic survival, where objects are in reality, and who are you versus the world. But of course, when you get into these very, very higher levels of multidimensionality and non-duality, you recognize that there is not this boundary and not this distinction that is a hard edge separating you from the world. You become very, very much intertwined with and embedded. You have multidimensional presences. You recognize that you're more than just one person. You are a multiplicity of consciousnesses in a multidimensional past, future, and parallel time arrangement. But that's a very, very high level to be maintaining, a high level of cognition to be maintaining while you're also surviving. So you might not be able to maintain that when you're like, look, I just have to be me and figure out how far away is a glass of water from my hand so I could get it to my mouth, hydrate, and stay alive. Like, I don't need to know about my whole multidimensional presence. But at a certain point, you need to know about your whole multidimensional presence. But when you are doing that, it's essential not to erroneously identify with stuff that is not you. Some stuff is not you, and some stuff is going to enter you. So as your light body is awakening, and I talk about that process of being kind of like the type of a light bulb that you can turn up, or like maybe a gas lamp that also you can turn up slowly, an incremental, slow increase in light in your body as you contain more light and you're learning how to comprehend greater levels of your viewpoint. You start to identify with the world around you and your environment, not only with your epidermis and everything that is interior of your epidermis. You start to define yourself not only as, hey, like I joke about this, I'm looking out for number one, right? With my tough guy voice. I'm me, and I only have to take care of me. And I'm looking out for number one. And it's just my membrane and everything that's inside of my membrane is me. But at a certain point, you start to take responsibility for stuff that is outside of your membrane because you recognize you're not an island or a unicellular organism. You're a multicellular presence across time, and you're responsible to the multicellular presence. So now let's go back to the whiteboard. This one. I told you that this little guy over here, let's get a different color so you don't get confused. Very good size. So you can see this little guy over here is analogous to one cell. So a unicellular organism could be something like an amoeba. And mostly we don't like amoebas because they make you sick if they go inside of your intestines, but whatever. Let's say a good positive one. Positive unicellular organism is a lactobacillus. You want that in your intestine, okay? So this is a nice, friendly, happy lactobacillus. It helps to digest milk, lactose in your intestines. And he's looking out for number one. Only thing he has to do is care about this green circle, which is his cellular membrane, his skin, and everything that is inside of his skin. And he's like, you know something? I'm looking out for number one, and I don't have to care at all about anything that's out here because you know what? None of that is me. None of that is me. I'm just finding some milk proteins in somewhere and I'm digesting them and I'm just doing my job. That's me. And that is fine. That is one level of evolution or development of consciousness. It is not very evolved, though. In order to have greater levels of complexity in life, it is necessary to have a multicellular array. And that is what our bodies are. We have trillions of cells, not just one cell. And it's absolutely crucial for each one of these trillions of cells that are in our bodies to act together. Because if they're only looking out for number one, you know what we call that? Call that a diseased cell or a cancer. So now if this is your body, and now this is no longer a lactobacillus, but this is a cell in your body that says, hey, I'm looking out for number one, and I don't have to care about this stupid guy or this stupid guy or this stupid guy. It's going to make your body sick because you know what he's going to do? He's going to be like, I think you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take all of their food. So here I'm taking this, all of this is their food. I'm going to take all their food. They're going to starve. I'm going to take all their water. They're going to starve. And also, let's make doo-doos. There, wait, get a doo-doo color. I am going to make lots of doo-doos too, because I don't care. I'm just going to take all the food I want. I'm going to make all the doo-doos that I want. I'm going to make doo-doos on you, make doo-doos on you, make doo-doos on you. And that is terrible, because if you do that, then the body dies. In a multicellular viewpoint, if one does not claim responsibility and identify correctly as a smaller part of the whole dies. The behavior that happens from that self-centeredness is erroneous and inappropriate. So what is appropriate at one level of evolution is not appropriate at the next highest level of evolution. And if you bring the lessons and viewpoint from the lower level, oh my God, I couldn't even say it, lower level of evolution to the higher levels of multicellular organization, you will die. So in order to be a part of the multicellular viewpoint, you must level up. Now I'm going to change colors again so that your brain knows I'm talking about something completely different. But now we have to talk about time and the universe. So I told you that scientists on Earth right now talk about the Big Bang as if it is a discrete moment and made one universe, one cell. That's it. And science does not give a F about anything where I'm scribbling in blue. It's like, la, 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 none of this exists, none of this exists, none of this exists. And science also says that none of these other versions of reality exist. And I don't have to care about them. You know why? Because they're not within my time bubble. They're not within my skin. They're not within my intracellular fluids that are in here. And so let's say I want to do something like I want to take lots of energy from these other places and I want to just eat all their food. And you know what, guys? This is why you do not have 0 point energy yet, because there is no free ride. And if you think that 0 point energy just means like, I think I'll just take all of the energy from another universe and then they can starve, that's not right. And also here's another big one. So you can't just siphon energy off of another universe. Let's do this one. I'm making doo-doos. I'm a scientist and I'm doing nuclear experiments with like bombs and CERN and other things like that. I'm making tears in the fabric of space-time and I'm making doo-doos. I don't care about the pollutions that I'm making out here. I don't care if I'm polluting this guy. I don't care if I'm polluting this guy. I don't care if I'm polluting this parallel layer of reality. I'm just a stupid unicellular scientist and I don't care. If you act like that, you're going to kill the fabric of space-time. I hope you guys got my silly, sarcastic overacting there. Cannot make doo-doos in the fabric of reality. So once again, that includes experimentation with nuclear materials. That would be anything that destroys atomic structure. So certainly fission, anything that is splitting the atom makes doo-doos. That's not good. And also some things that are genetic distortions aren't just a distortion here because again, your DNA is a connection to the fabric of space-time. When you make genetic distortions, that can be CRISPRs, genetic modifications, splicing and dicing, all of those types of things. that creates bleed through into other layers of reality. You can consider reality to be like a tapestry. Let me draw it for you. So here, let's draw. Here's one layer of reality. And then here's another layer of reality on top of it. And then here's another layer of reality on top of it. And when you do stuff, it bleeds through into other layers. So if I drop a little bit of black ink onto this top layer of reality, you ever scribbled with a marker on a pad of paper and you make scribbles up here, but it translates down to this layer here and then also down to this layer here. And that is what happens with these type of time-based events. Anything that is nuclear, anything that is splitting the atom, I forgot to mention CERN because I'm going so fast internally. The Large Hadron Collider. That's where you have a big, giant, fast, round thing going around and around and around, and then it's going to smash some particles together. So here it is. I'm smashing this particle with this particle together, and let's get a good explosion color, and it's going to make an explosion. Kapow, explosion, kapow, explosion, kapow, explosion. That's an explosion that is like this moment here. And it doesn't just affect this top layer, it leads through here and it leads through here. And science, quote unquote, is doing that in a very, very harmful, ignorant, blind, butterfly stomping way. And that is a little reference to the Distant Sound of Thunder, that story that's a science fiction story. Very, very worth reading, about the man who stepped on the butterfly on the time safari and how he changed everything in time. Went back in time on a time safari, stepped on a butterfly, got back to the future, and then everything was different because he messed things up, because he changed one little tiny thing. When you start changing these things, it has massive, imagine like a ship going up and down, waves, changes going outward to the side that are not necessarily positive and definitely not intentional or controlled. That's what we're talking about is this time structure. We have the central core timeline and we have all of these parallel peripheral timelines. And this is one coherent whole. Just like in your body, you have many, many, many cells and they all work together. So you start to think of this whole structure as you. It's not fair to say, like, I'm only this central core timeline. You also are these peripheral timelines, but those timelines are who you are when you're not your full self. But not everybody is the same when you are not your full self. Some people are angry, violent, megalomaniac, axe murderers, like we mentioned earlier today. And some people are, a diminished version of yourself could be like working at a non-optimal job or being very depressed or not fulfilling your dreams. Like if your central core timeline is where you're going to be following your inner vision, making some big project, whatever, like, singing in front of a lot of people or something like that. We'll just use that as an example, like being an opera singer. That's you on your central core timeline. On your peripheral timelines, you might be working at the corner store. And as you're mopping the floor, you're kind of singing along to the oldies karaoke style. Like these are two very, very different magnitudes of you using and exploring your gifts in the world. And you're not a bad person if you work at the corner store and you sing along with the oldies on the radio. It just means you have not fulfilled your true potential. So there's a real difference between just being a diminished, smaller version of yourself and being a total axe murderer. That needs to be said. And in our world where there are these different types of distortion technologies that are being perpetrated against us, this is kind of like a wholesale industrialization of the same dark magic techniques that have prevented people from being in their fullness of being on their, ascended mastery timelines and kind of exploring these peripheral distortion side dishes. Not everybody responds in this moment of diminishment in the same way. Some people have become violent or psychopathic or pathological in their self-expression. And they are literally like cannibalizing other people's energy, acting like cancers. There are some people in this world where they are acting like a cancer in society. And the descriptions of a cancerous behavior would be to say, taking energy from other cells excessively to sustain yourself at their expense and creating a lot of doo-doos that would be like pollutions. So who can we think of who's doing something like that? Some people who are like billionaires. They might have a company that, because they are millionaire or billionaire level, they are amassing a lot of energy at the expense of the other cells. Like, let's talk about Jeff Bezos from Amazon. I think he's a pretty safe person to talk about. He's a public figure. We're not like bullying someone or something like that. He got rich by taking a lot of money from other people. Like, there was a lot of predatory capitalism, a lot of destruction of smaller stores, a lot of like hungry hippo, like just consuming and incorporating smaller things into his larger thing. And so he's a billionaire, right? He's got a lot of money, but at the expense of others. And then the pollution, creating a lot of pollution in order to sustain and achieve his vast wealth. And that's just one visible example of that. This is actually wider, and it's not just individual, it's also nation state systemic. So you can think of a nation state that is acting in a cancerous way by drawing life force energy from its population in the form of taxes or some other form of tribute. Like, I've been reading about what's going on in China right now. You might not be hearing any of it because there's definitely minimal news, but the state over there, the nation state that runs the place, has been confiscating people's gold, confiscating their money, confiscating their wealth. Like, they're in supreme financial distress. And so the state is like, oh, I'm a cell. I'm hungry. I'm going to take energy from you. And I don't care if it makes you die of starvation. Literally, they are confiscating the life savings of the peasantry in order to keep the state afloat. Don't care if they starve out the peasantry. And also, the state of China, I think, is a good example of creating a lot of doo-doos. A ton of pollution. Pollution from plastics factories. Like, hey, this plastics factory is great. We're going to make a lot of money, working, making stuff for the dollar stores that we're going to sell in America. So we don't care about if we create various chemicals that go into your groundwater that are going to make harm for the rest of the cells. You can tell by my face, I'm not happy about this because we're going to make money. The state is going to make money. State is going to benefit from this. So a lot of things in the world that you're recognizing are ignorant and self-centered and acting in a cancerous way that pollutes and diminishes the rest of everything around it. There's also a basic disconnect for anything that lives on this planet that just thinks of itself as an individual, disconnected organism, not as a connected part of the ecosystem. I would define that as cancer. So any person or group or organization that's just like, I just live on this planet, but I don't really like this planet. It's like living with a roommate. Like we are not together. Like, I just live here, but I am really not with you. That is it's insane, but it's disconnected to the point of really being what a cancer is. A cancer is inside of the body, but what it does is it disconnects from its identity as having a responsibility to the rest of the body and the rest of the cells. So when an organism, it could be a person, but what if it was whatever, a dragonfly or a flea, lives on this planet, if they're just like, I don't really like this planet. I mean, I use its water, food, resources, whatever, but whatever. But I don't really like being here, and I kind of don't mind if I poop up the place. That is completely erroneous and disrespectful. And of course, if there are enough mutated or erroneous cells like that on a planet, it causes the destruction of the planet. So anything that is that disconnected or disassociated from its innate responsibility to its environment is acting, we should say, instead of a cancer, as a pathogen. But now think about humanity. Not only some humans in humanity think of themselves as distinct from the planet. They're definitely invader mindset. Like they're probably not even natal, you know what I mean? Like innate to this world. They might be more like whatever 59% invader in their genes, as opposed to native, truly earthly souls that are supposed to be here. But how about looking at the rest of time and looking at the rest of the universe? Because this has to do also with some of the mind state of like a person like Elon Musk, who's kind of like, I don't really like being here. I don't really like the environment that much. I don't really like the food, the water, the anything. I would think I would prefer to live on Mars, and definitely acting like a pathogen in that way. But then looking at the rest of the world, like other planets, as like resources to plunder, places to go and forcibly inhabit arbitrarily according to your own conveniences, that is also acting as a pathogen. And that is acting as a pathogen that is like a communicable pathogen that spreads itself and goes other places, like not even bad enough to have a tiny infection in one place, spread itself to become a systemic infection and other places. Totally not good. Now let's go back to that drawing that I was doing for you in terms of time and the time field. In order to level up and become multidimensional, you have to start thinking of your life and your timeline as being connected to a larger time presence. So you can't just be like, just get my pen and a good color. Can't just be like, this is my reality and I'm only beholden to my reality and I don't care what's going on in other realities. I have to recognize you are one version of reality in a whole array of realities. And that whole array of realities includes this stuff that's your peripheral selves to the left and the right of your ascended mastery area, and that you want to be respectful of the entire time field. So when you, I want to kind of like reorganize my thoughts here. I want to come from a different direction. Looking at the world and appreciating the multidimensional viewpoint. Okay. Coming at this from a different direction. In order to achieve the multidimensional viewpoint, you activate your eye of time. When you are using your physical eyes, you're in your materialist viewpoint. And it is easy to say the wall is just the wall, and this is just one version of reality, because there's a lot that is unseen, unexperienced, and under-acknowledged. When you activate your inner eye, you are able to perceive the multidimensional aspects that are perceived only with the inner eye. They are not perceived with the physical eye. So here you can see my home through physical eyes. But in order to perceive the alternative multidimensional realities, you would have to look with your inner eye. And so that, what would that look like? That would look like different versions of reality. In a different version of reality, someone else lives here. That would be one way of being able to see it. Like I'm walking on a treadmill in a totally different house in a different version of reality, or in a different version of reality, whatever. I painted the interior purple. I would never do that. But that's what that place would look like. Different versions of reality. Now let's go back to like focusing on your personal journey as you, because as an individual with free will, as you're navigating through the time field, what you're wanting to do is to make choices that put you on the optimum timeline and take responsibility for the choices that you've made, so that that way you are achieving longevity and coherence. You're moving away from and de-energizing the non-optimum periphery of your realities. Hopefully, you never even have to explore them. Like, for example, becoming a homeless drug addict. Hopefully, you never have to explore that within your field of potential. If that exists, you don't have to energize it. How do you not energize it? You do not make those choices. And so what that might look like is making a very, very crucial choice. You know, like maybe when you're in high school, someone offers you to try a drug or at a party or something like that. And you look at it and you just say, here is a diverging path. Try the drug, and go far to the periphery and end up living in a cardboard box, like looking like a wreck and feeling terrible, or to not try the drug and go in a much more positive direction in your life and begin to self-construct and explore your dreams and do fun and important stuff. And that is within your free will. It's so important for me to emphasize that a lot of this self-construction and exploration of the time field is within your free will. This is not a deterministic reality. In a deterministic reality, people go into learned helplessness and profound depression where they're like, this whole thing was written for me. I'm just an actor on a stage. Don't blame me. Like my shoulders go up, my back goes down. Like I'm nothing. I have no muscle tone and I can't do anything. And I just get pushed around in life. That is not truthful and it's not constructive. And if you make that your truth, if you make it your truth that you like, if you say to yourself, like, I don't have any control over anything, I'm nothing and nobody, like that becomes your truth. So it's essential to claim the truth that you are co-creating your reality with God. You're baking that bread. You're kneading the dough, baking the bread with your consciousness, and exploring your free will as you navigate these time structures. But also don't be too harsh on yourself because some elements of unfairness and injustice have been grandfathered in. Might not have 100% control over your dough. You might not have 100% control over your attention. And that also relates to consciousness residues on the membrane of death that might cause your chakras to wibble wobble. Key point, that might cause your attention to wibble wobble. That might cause mental distractions. So mastering the mind and learning to have focus of your attention is so important to being able to really activate consciously your higher faculties and consciously create things in the world. If you guys want to know what are some practical exercises you can do to focus your mind and build those muscles to be able to be an adequate co-creator in reality, things like when you wake up in the morning before you even open your eyes, see if you can remember where you were before you woke up. Be like, what was I just thinking about? Where was I? What was I doing? Have a little notebook next to your bed. Try to build those mental bridges between wakefulness and sleeping. As you're going to sleep, see if you can watch yourself falling asleep and slowly descending or diving down into the pool of what is your sleepful consciousness, your dreamlike consciousness. And when you are in your dreams, see if you can become aware of lucid dreaming. I'm not very good at it, but this is the basic concepts of what you do. And then see if you can, when you wake up in the morning, remember back. Like, well, if you can remember, like, oh, I remember I was dreaming I was on a hot air balloon. But before that, I was dreaming I was in a cave. But before that, I was dreaming I was with grandma. And before that, I was dreaming I was with an alligator. Like, just see how far back you can remember, okay? These are consciousness muscle building exercises that you do so that way you can be better at staying focused. You can also do that same type of a thing with your daily waking consciousness in a recap at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, as you're laying in your bed in your pajamas and you're starting to go to sleep, think about, you're like, okay, well, I just was brushing my teeth. And before that, I was watching a show. And then what was I doing before that? Before that, I was eating hamburgers. And then before that, go back through your day, do a recap, see how far back you can rewind your mind to remember your whole entire day. Or do it with a conversation. See, I'm not very good at this at all because it's linguistic stuff, but I have a friend who remembers everything. And it's no problem at all for him. You could be like, whatever. You have a whole hour-long conversation. And then if you asked him to recap, he'd be like, well, we were talking about this. Before that, we were talking about this. And we were talking about this. We were talking about this. Like, these are mental muscles that you can cultivate, and it will help you in your consciousness journey. You can also do other exercises. People do this with memorizing the order of like a deck of playing cards, like kings, queens, twos, threes, fours, hearts, diamonds. You shuffle up the deck, and then you see if you can memorize the order that the cards are in. And you'd be like, Aurora, like, I can't remember 52 things in a row. That is hard. Like, I can't remember a phone number, 6 numbers in a row. Like, practice. If you practice lifting a 5-pound weight, at a certain point, you get better at it. Got to work at these mental muscles. Nobody is born with these capacities. These guys practice. These are called memory calisthenics. All right. Yeah, so those are some very good focuses. Let me see if yes, there's so many other and they're slipping away at the moment. I'll come back to more of them, but there are many other consciousness focusing exercises that you can do to be able to get yourself in the mode of being able to do this. Oh yeah, well, what I do, I just remembered an important one, which is music. It's what I do. So when I'm playing my songs, initially there's the creative explosion and I play, innovate the whole thing. But then I go back and I learn what I played. And I'm like, oh, it goes like this. Practice this part and you master that. And like my songs can be long. They can be like 5 or 7 minutes long. That's a lot of notes to remember in order. But that's something I'm really good at because it doesn't involve words. So I can do this. Or numbers. I'm really good with that too. So I can remember all of the notes of my song, long strings of patterned notes that fit together. And that is an excellent consciousness exercise. And it really is a type of a muscle. And like anything, if you don't use muscles, they go away. So you have to keep on practicing. But the more you do it, the better you are at it. And you can be amazed at the things that you can remember. So yeah, once again, claiming yourself as supercomputer, because the truth is your conscious daily intellect at the level of yellow might not be that great at remembering things, but your highest consciousness self has an excellent memory that is really infallible that you can use to remember everything. And that's like my friend who can remember these long conversations, or me when I'm in my groove playing a song. Sometimes I start a song that I know from like whatever. I wrote it 4 years ago. And I'm like, oh yeah, right, I remember this now. It goes like this. And you just get back into the groove and it's all right there. Your inside and your outside and combining this. When you are externalizing your internal experience, you want to remain focused so that your process remains pure and does not become destabilized or polluted by other stuff that shouldn't be a part of your expression or your creation. When you're in a divine partnership with God, you come to the vibrating field of your potential, that is divinity, with your world seed of consciousness. And you're like, I'm going to plant this seed, the world, and the world is going to grow like a beautiful, giant, majestic oak tree out of that and become all these different moments and things that can happen. But you want to make sure that it like stays pure and true to your vision. But please know also that God is not some kind of a stupid idiot. And if you plant a world seed that has some distractions in there, like maybe you didn't do your math totally correctly, there's some problems or destabilizations in there. And God is not going to be like, okay, great, let's just follow this template to the letter, follow this blueprint to the letter and manifest all of these harmful or erroneous things, potentially erroneous things. No, the truth is God has a filter. Sorry, I'm just restarting my little treadmill. God is not a stupid idiot. God has a filter. God is prepared with all of the most amazing fail safes for almost every situation. God kind of looks through the potentials of the world seed that you are planting and bringing forward, and is like, okay, cool, good. This part not so much, and then good. God has a filter and filters out the stuff that's not so good. That maybe you were distracted in the moment. Like, if I'm playing my piano, blah, 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 and all of a sudden my dog barks, like I get distracted and then I play the wrong note because my brain went crazy. Don't be concerned. It's like, oh no, like I've destroyed the world because I got momentarily distracted making my world seed. Please do not put yourself under so much pressure. Know that the divine mind is selective in its partnership with you and will be selecting and energizing only the correct life-affirming longevity and coherence events that you bring to it. So if you bring like 100% trash, God is going to be like, this is not a good world seed. We're planting nothing from here. Nothing. But let's say you have 59% good stuff. God is like, cool, we will manifest the 59% good stuff and not the other junk. Try to make it 100% good stuff. But that's like being an ascended master, being a perfect person. I don't want you to feel so like this. It's like contracted, like, I can't do it because you're so worried about playing a wrong note. You must learn by doing. So you try to make a good future, you try to manifest a good reality, and then you see how it comes out, and you're working in percentages, and you increase your percentage with each effort that you do. This is what the inside and the outside coming together and the little ants communicating what this comes out to. So now let's go back to my drawing. See, I'm tying it all together. It's really, really good. Let me just hydrate a little bit more. A little ant moment. And also, Cheeky is arriving. Hold on a moment. We'll go to little ant in a moment. Thank you for that brief break. Let's go to the whiteboard now. Oh, sorry, not the whiteboard. I'm pressing the wrong button, guys. Forgive me. Picture. But it erased my little ants, so I have to redraw the little ants. Okay, glorious drawing here. Okay, so we'll just make a little scribble. This represents the little ant here. And then let's put this little guy over here. Inside versus outside. Inner world of thoughts and emotions where I'm presently scribbling, and ephemera and things that cannot be weighed on a scale. And then out here in the outer world, stuff that is physical reality, five senses reality, stuff that we can all agree on, the consensual reality, okay? So now we get into the crucial aspect of the singularity oscillating and how that creates the combination of inside and outside. So this purple dot is singularity, and this purple dot is also singularity. And you can see the colorful lines that make the lasagna shape in here. This is the end result of the point that is ordinarily in the middle over here, moving up and moving down. This is oscillating. And where is it oscillating? It is oscillating in the room that contains the room. And the room that contains the room is called hyperspace. So I just drew a box around this in order to represent a context. Without that context, there's not really a way to be able to measure, like, how far up is this? How far down is this? It's just floating in a sea, or there's not a reference point. But as soon as you put it into a hyperspace box or a higher dimensional box, then you have a reference point to be able to determine where is singularity. I hope you can also see that each one of these represents a cross section. So this upper area here, that's one cross section of my red sculpture. Here is the torus. That's one circle, and here's the other circle. That's a terrible drawing, but just go with it. Just go with it. Here's one vortex. I know we have to laugh sometimes. Here's one vortex, right? And then here's the other vortex. And that's what it looks like when it is not oscillating. But when it is jumping up and down, that vortex structure is sometimes up here, and then it is sometimes down here. And it jumps up and down relevant to this large structure, like this. What makes it jump up and down? The answer to that is your own momentum of your consciousness and the spontaneous, miraculous activity known as doing the flying rainbow lasagna. So hold on, we're going to come back to this picture, but first we're going to go back to my face. So I showed you that red cross section. Sometimes, so now my apartment is hyperspace, all right? This is the purple box. Sometimes the apparatus is up here. Sometimes it is down here, and it jumps up and down. This is the purple dot in the center here. Sometimes the purple dot is up here. Sometimes the purple dot is down here. This apparatus, when it is not jumping up and down, still has very clear boundaries between the inside and the outside. The two ants do not communicate. But as this jumps from up there to down there, the two levels of the membrane start to communicate. Go back to the picture now. This area over here starts to communicate with this area over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gesture to here. You can see this. This is kind of like an outer swoop. I don't have a better word. The ant is over here. In fact, let's draw it better. The ant is walking, actually see how there's red arrows going like this? So the ant is actually walking like this. And right now it's on the outside of one of these apparatuses. But then as this apparatus jumps upward, it actually ends up being on what was the inside, but has now become the outside. And now my languaging has become so confusing that it's almost nonsensical. So I have to try to find a better way to say things. And I think what I'm going to do is use a Mobius strip to try to share and depict this to you. So first of all, let me go back to stop share. Hold on a second, because I've got my whole little setup over here. Just to find my Mobius strip. It's in here somewhere. Yeah, no, I know it's around here somewhere. Hold on. Maybe it's back here. Oh, here we go. You guys should see my house. I have so many crazy things here. Okay. This is a Mobius strip. It was invented or developed or innovated by the Swedish mathematician named Mr. Mobius. And it is basically something we can explore at home by taking anything, a piece of ribbon or a piece of paper. This one is made out of a piece of wood. And you simply make a strip and you give it one twist and then join the edges together. And this is special because it's an impossible shape. What's impossible about that, Aurora? It doesn't seem so impossible to me. You're holding it right there. It is impossible because it is a shape that has only one side. I'll use my finger, easier for us, okay? So right now we're going to say this is the surface we define as outside, the surface that is facing, like this is the inside of the racetrack. So my finger's on the surface that is on the outside, okay? Watch this, guys. My car is like a little ant. Outside, 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 outside. Outside, 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 outside. Outside, outside, outside. Inside there. I did not lift up my finger, I promise you. And inside, okay. Inside, 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 inside. Inside, 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 inside. Inside, 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 inside. Outside. Outside, outside, outside. And I know I'm now in a very uncomfortable position, but outside, 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 outside. We just went from the inside to the outside and back to the inside again. I didn't say that correctly either, without lifting up my finger. It's a side that only has one side. It also only has one edge. Let's start off with this top edge, okay? Top edge, top edge, top edge, top edge, top edge. Top, 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 top. Watch. Top, 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 bottom, 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 bottom. I thought we were on the top. How did we get on the bottom? I didn't lift up my finger, I swear. And you saw the whole entire thing happen. And now I'm in an uncomfortable position where I have to contort my finger. But look, now I'm on the top edge again, top. That was like painful to watch, but you got the impression. There is only one edge, only one surface, and only one edge. It is an impossibility, but it is happening. The flying ring of lasagna is very similar. Outside, 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 outside. Inside, 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 inside. Outside, 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 outside. Inside, 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 inside. Just like the dolphin. I'm above the water. I'm below the water. Waking, sleeping. Amorphous, realized, or manifested. Potential, manifested. Unmeasured, materiality. ephemeral material. All right. So the flying rainbow lasagna, when you master this, your own body becomes a mixture between the ephemeral and the material. And this is the essence of what it is to truly become empowered in the world. Your inner world becomes your outer reality. And then your outer reality becomes your inner world. And then you keep on doing that like the dolphin, up, down, up, down. In order to do this, of course, you want to have a healthy inner reality so that you're taking the good stuff that is inside of you and making it outside of you. And then you take the good stuff that's outside of you and put it inside of you. So, of course, I'm speaking to everyone in this class, and you're all exemplary human beings and very good and positive. You may have fears or traumas or things like that, but you're not like malevolent axe murderers. You're not Adolf Hitler. You're not Charles Manson. I feel very happy and comfortable with encouraging you guys to manifest or externalize your inner state. And then also, when you do that, you learn from it and you re-internalize it. So this is literally the process of what it is to be an artist. As a visual artist, I have an internal state. I have an idea and a vision in my mind. And then I get my little stick with a bunch of hairs glued to the end of it called a paintbrush, and I externalize my internal state. Over many days and weeks, I paint it and I make a thing. And then at the end of making the thing, I put it in front of myself and I sit there like this. And I'm like, now I look at that thing. I learn from it. I don't just like make it and then like throw it out the window. I learn from it. I look at it and I'm like, what is this thing? What is important about it? Why did I make it? What has it make me feel? What is good about it? What can be better? Like, I don't say like what is horrible or bad or sucks, but I say, what can be better? How would I do it better? And then I internalize that. And then I make the next one. And that's also similar to what I do with my music. So when I do my music, it's not visual, but I do a giant creative explosion where it's like, make stuff, make stuff, make stuff. And then when I'm done with making the song, I sit and I just listen with the headphones on. And I'm like, okay, I'm just listening. And I listen to it. And I'm like, well, what parts of the song are cool? And what do I like? And what could be better? And then when I'm done, I'm like, okay, on the next one, I'm going to have more of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff. We do the same exact thing with the experience and embodiment of the practice of flying rainbow lasagna. When you start to master this oscillation, your inside becomes your outside, and the world is your canvas. And you make paintings with your experiences in the world. And then you look at stuff. You don't just make it and then walk around like, a dumb person and be like, blah, 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 I'm not looking at this. But you make stuff and then you receive what you have made and you internalize it and you look at your life and you say, what are the things that are successful and that are looking good and that are positive externalized creations? And then what are the things that need work that aren't that great? And you re-internalize it. And then you dance again and you externalize the creation again. And this is the creative process of refinement and perfection of reality. And it's very, very similar to the actions of what the sun and the stars are all doing. So the sun and the stars are all emitting time waves that come out, and we experience them as biological conduits over here. And then we send back feedback to the sun about like, hey, my life is great. I'm feeling super great. Or like, I'm about to drive over a cliff. Everything is not great. And the sun is like, if you're about to drive over a cliff, clearly that's not a good part of the painting. I'm going to internalize that, change and shift what I'm creating as the sun, and then I'm going to emit a better, updated, upgraded timeline for you to experience that does not involve like your imminent death by whatever, smushing at the bottom of a ravine or something like that. And the sun is continually refining its own creative process. So it's important to know this, even at high levels, like the level of the giant ball of consciousness in the sky. Do not necessarily have to know everything about your creation or everything about the future. This whole creative milieu that we're within is in a process of self-perfection, manifesting things, figuring out the things that are not correct calculations, re-internalizing it, fixing the incorrect calculations, and then re-manifesting. And this is negative entropy. So Dan Winters calls neg entropy. But basically, it's a organizational process. Entropy is disorganization and de-evolving and going from a more organized state into a less organized state until you're like totally kaput. But a negative entropy is basically organization or life or vivification. The ultimate neg entropy is birth. When fertilization occurs in a woman and then the human being develops in there, that is the ultimate in negative entropy. Things that were disorganized become organized. A bunch of random nutrients from like tacos and pickles that pregnant ladies crave coming into the body gets organized into a human being and then comes out. So it is miraculous or a level of unlikelihood that you would consider to be miraculous. So unlikely that the chances against it are astronomical. So it means that there's something that is happening that is beyond mere chance or whimsy, that there's something else that's going on that is making these things happen. So it's intentional. So all of these levels of achieving greater levels of, sorry, I use levels too much, achieving greater states of organization through expression is non-random, unlikely, but highly intentional. And that's the purpose of the world. That is the purpose of the world. Mommy, daddy, why are we here? In order to achieve greater levels of organization. This is a refinery. You came from the center, you got extra stuff added to you, kind of filled out the bulk, filled out with you diluted the solution. And then your job now is to remove everything that is non-essential, to refine the extra stuff away, and to return to the focus of who you really, really are. And that's who you are on that central timeline. And that brings you back to your origin. But this is not like some kind of negative time cycle, task of Sisyphus, boring revolutions, that just keep going around and around. No, not at all. Each time there is a leveling up. Each time there is an increase in the overall sense of organization that is happening within the system. So each time you increase organization as a soul, the sun increases organization, your planet increases organization. These are all very, very large and positive time refinement apparatuses that are happening. And it means like you're not just walking in endless circles getting nowhere, really are getting somewhere. But if you feel like you've been walking and getting nowhere, there are real problems with the non-pristine aspects of the system that you've been within. And some of that is like the sweat hogs who refuse to learn, the fears that are out of place, that should be guarding the membrane of death, but instead are directly in front of the path of ascension, like many other distortions, hijackings, and diminishments of the original apparatus, the way it's supposed to work. So things have been taking a lot longer than the way they're supposed to take. All right. It's not supposed to be this way. It's been messed up and now has become largely unpleasant. This is why I had to create and innovate the lasagna, because there really weren't pathways to resolution out of those negative, and I want to say no traction, like a time cycle where there's no traction. You're spinning your wheels, like you're in the mud or you're in the snow and there's just no traction. There's no way you're getting anywhere. So Flying Rainbow Lasagna makes it possible to create new patterns, get traction, change the variables, and actually transcend the negative, non-nourishing time patterns that you've been experiencing. So you want to be in evolutionary time patterns where you get better every time. Every time you externalize and then internalize again, you're growing, learning, and evolving in positive ways. And same thing with your activities with the sun. That is the essence of what non-duality is. So now I want to talk about non-duality, and of course get to any questions or comments. But non-duality does not mean like evil gets a free ride. That would be a terrible and dangerous misinterpretation of everything I'm trying to say. Non-duality does not mean that black and white are the same or hot and cold are the same. If it were, I would be like this. If we're in a non-dual experience, like 79 degrees is the same as 79,000 degrees. So clearly it all doesn't matter. Like if I drank tea that was 79,000 degrees, like I would die. It's not the same. They're not equitable. So these and also let me hydrate. Because you have to so what the simplistic and erroneous view wants to say is now that we're in a non-dual system and the inside and the outside are the same, like everything is the same and everything is me. And SpongeBob face is like, no, you actually still have to make a distinction between self and not self, and between that which is evolving and life affirming and that which is de-evolving or causing friction or causing something to go closer to the membrane of death. So you can start to think just in terms of the abstract angles that consciousness is moving at. When you're in alignment with this central core timeline, there's no friction. Perfectly smooth, blissful, frictionless experience. When you're at an angle like this, there's friction, and the friction is often experienced as mental distress or even cognitive thought. Cognitive thought itself is a type of inner friction. And again, when you're doing these memory exercises, or like, and I don't know what it's like for you, but for me, like when I'm in my musical mind and I'm doing these long songs and I can remember everything, like I'm not verbal, I'm not rational. I'm using a higher level of my multidimensional presence to be able to create these patterns and sustain them. So you will have to level up your consciousness in order to be able to do this. I also want to talk again about the responsibility to other cells in the environment, to, let's say, the external time presences, not just this timeline, but to other timelines. What responsibility do you have towards yourself on other timelines? What responsibility do those aspects of self have towards you? Because you want to be like a good galactic citizen. So towards yourself on other timelines, and then also this version of Earth. So this version of Earth is one cell or one experience, but there's another version of Earth where things are going slightly differently. Let's first of all now we talked about visual phenomena, things like having two eyes, things like the retinal cells. Now let's talk about a phenomenon that is called persistence of vision. So you might think of that, sounds kind of familiar because there's a Salvador Dali famous painting of melted clocks that's called Persistence of Time. But this is not the same, but I think it's referential. Persistence of vision has to do with your optical mechanics. You're not actually seeing moving images. You're actually seeing a series of still frames that are connected together by the integument of your perception. So just as your perception is connecting together I1 and I2 in order to create a three-dimensional interpretation of reality, your inner perception is also stringing together static images that are flashing in front of you at a particular rate to make it appear as if there is a seamless continuum where Aurora's arm is moving across the screen. Like it doesn't look to you like there's one motion here, and then one motion here, and then one motion here, and then one motion here. Like that's not what I look like to you. I look like a moving creature. And that is 100% from the genius of your own inner perception. Claim that you are a supercomputer, because that is supercomputer level stuff. It happens through the optical phenomenon and also through the spinning of your chakras. So you have your chakras and they are spinning like wheels in front of you, and they have a particular frame rate at which they are accessing reality. That frame rate is 10 to the negative 32. That is very, very small. That is called the Planck length. And when you have the French breads of reality, my hand is now made out of bread again, and you cut the French bread into bruschetta, if you can make the skinniest little toast you possibly can, that is 10 to 32nd units across, that is called the Planck length. It is the skinniest slice of toast you can make and still call it bread. If you get any smaller than that, you are just down to like the basic foundational building blocks of reality. You can't even call it bread anymore. All right. It's so small, it's tinier than a proton. Proton is at the center of an atom. So very, very, very tiny. So with your visual sense of self, the frame rate that is optimal that humans have calculated is 26 frames per second. That's second. 26 things flashing in front of your eyes in 1 second is enough information for your brain to put all of these slices together and tie it together into a visual story that makes sense. Like maybe you have an object that moves across the screen. First it's here, then 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 it's here. And your brain connects it all to make it look like it's moving in a smooth arc. It's not. It's a series of static images. These are the train cars of time. Planck length. So you have, pardon me, individual moments of time that are frozen. I'm frozen. I'm frozen. I'm frozen. And then you dance of your DNA is the motion of your consciousness that connects you together. The dance of your DNA and the spinning of your chakras are intimately related, innately connected. And this also relates to what is known as the zoetrope. Zoetrope is an old-fashioned form of original animation. They really perfected it in the 1100s or 1200s or so, so maybe about 1,000 years ago. But it might even predate that. But basically what you have is a barrel that has very regular slits that are cut in a cylinder, and you spin the cylinder so that those little slits flash as they go by your eyes. And then you draw a film strip, a cartoon, and you draw the cartoon and it shows slightly different changes throughout each of the moments of the cartoon, and you put it around the inside of the barrel and you spin the barrel. So when you look through the slits at just the right way, it looks like it's moving. Okay, so here's one that you might be more familiar with. Did you ever get bored in your math class when you were in third grade or so? I'm just picking up a book like this and make a flip book. You know, when you can write in the margins of your book and then you flip animation, you flip the pages and you see a little stick figure moving. That is animation. That is what we're talking about here. Old-fashioned forms of animation. You have moments that tie together, where they blur together when you flash them at exactly the right rate, okay? So of course, old-fashioned films, like when you went to the cinema, are different than modern digital explorations. In old-fashioned films, let's draw it for you. You literally have a film strip. Thank you for your patience. There we go. So this thing, and this thing, and this thing. Okay, so this is an old-fashioned piece of film. And this is like a movie. This over here is the beginning of the movie. And this over here is the end of the movie. And then, of course, each one of these individual frames represents the middle and the stuff that's going on in the movie. You know I need to make that last line. Can't stop now. Good. And it could be anything. We'll just make a dot. The dot is up here. Then the dot moves down here. Then the dot hangs out in the middle. And what would this look like? It would look like a dot bouncing up and down. Put it actually through the movie projector. Humans create this type of technology because you're externalizing your inner structure. Now we have to talk about what the multidimensional viewpoint looks like. So this is the linear viewpoint. You're born over here. You move through time in this direction, then you die over here. And you look at one moment at the Planck length per moment. What does the multidimensional viewpoint look like? What if we took scissors? Let's just take a different color. And we cut these apart. Cut, dot, dot, dot. Cut, right? And then what we could do is we could make a whole giant table. Now imagine that this is a big, super enormous table that represents your whole entire life. And what we're going to do is lay out your whole life in a grid. We're going to see every moment all at once. I am going to draw it all because I am that way. Give me 1 minute. Dum, 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 10 minutes later, 5 hours later, 23 years later. I'm almost there, guys, I promise. Okay, good. This is the beginning of the movie. And then this is the end of the movie. And then this is everything that happens in between, the creamy middle in the movie. But you can see this is the multidimensional viewpoint. What does that mean? It means you are seeing everything all at once. So when you're in the movie theater, these individual frames are flashing in front of your eyes one at a time. And your mind is creating an image of this little dot jumping up and down. But when you look at it from this perspective, you are seeing every moment at once. And you have a different overarching perspective. Like you can really see the overarching patterns that are interwoven throughout the entire storyline. Like, you know, you're like, well, there was a red dot here, and there was a red dot here, and there was a red dot here, and there was a red dot here. Like, look at all the times in my life when that red dot showed up. Wow, I can see that all. As opposed to if you were just seeing it one moment at a time, you would say, this is this one day that a red dot showed up, and I don't see it in the context of the larger pattern of all these other things that are going on, all right? So that is to say that you have one version of reality, but that's like saying you have one cell. I'll draw it for you so that it really hits home visually. This is what you've got here. One cell, one version of reality with one singularity dot in the middle of it. But that is just one version of reality. The truth is, you are in a reality that has many different possibilities being explored. And if I just move my thing, you've also got this version of reality. I'm not going to draw the entire grid structure, but let's just draw a couple of implied. There we go. This one, things are slightly different. The red dot is here, and then the red dot is here, and the red dot is here. Slightly different version of reality. Ooh, but then there's a different one, a different version of reality over here. Now let's draw this, grid structure over here. And so let's say this is what the first time that the movie editor checked out this movie. I was like, okay, here's this movie. But you know what? The story of the red dot bouncing around in life could be better. If I improve it, then I change the storyline and it becomes this reality. But it could be better still. Then I change the storyline and it becomes this reality. This is the higher dimensional viewpoint. And each one of these represents a cell of the body. And each one of these cells of the body is a universe or a story of the world. Verse, like a verse of poetry, and uni meaning one. This is a body. Let's get a color that we can use to really gesture here. This is a multicellular body where you've got many different cells, cell, and you can't just be looking out for number one. You got to be looking out for everybody who's in the entire cellular structure of the body, because you all work together and you are all interconnected and complementary or harmonically, foundationally connected in a positive way. So if you do doo-doos, let's draw doo-doos. Here's doo-doos in this area of the time field over here, and then it makes some doo-doos over here, and then it makes some doo-doos over here. None of that is good. You're pooping up the joint. You're pooping up other realities with your choices. But let's say, what if you do a rectification? Let's use green as a rectification color. So I do something positive over here, and that bleeds through positively over here, and then that impacts positively over here. You are adding to the overarching health and vitality of the alive time field. So this is what the multidimensional viewpoint really is, right? It's important to know. Okay, so when you activate your higher faculties, it isn't just the ability to see the future in your own life. And it's definitely not just the ability to somehow prognosticate or to prognosticate for money, which I don't necessarily agree to or condone. for a variety of reasons. I'm not just like trying to keep people away from abundance or something like that, but just like some things you shouldn't sell, like your sexuality and other things that are very sacred. And the ability to perceive the future is sacred. It has a huge impact on where your consciousness is going. And if you're a little ant and you're walking in a particular direction, and then someone tells you, like, oh no, stop walking in that direction, go in a different direction immediately, and you go in a different direction, that changes the time field. And so the ability to influence someone else's life is a huge position of responsibility. And if you think about something like the Delphic Oracle, this is a story from ancient mythology. The Delphic Oracle would like hover over a crevice in the earth and inhale various hallucinogenic sulfuric fumes, partially asphyxiate herself, and achieve visionary visions of the future, and then tell them to people and influence other people's lives. And she did that one time very famously. It was like a rotating position. Like there wasn't only one Delphic Oracle. There were different women that played that role. But the king that came forward was like, should I invade or should I not invade? And she gave him an idea that he should invade. And he did. And he thought he was going to be successful. And he totally got trashed. And then she's like, ha ha, like I told you the wrong thing and destroyed your country. And this is a part of the responsibility of being in an oracular, I don't know if that's the word, position, having an impact on other people's lives. In a perfect world, each one of us has a perfectly clear windshield that you can use to see where you're going in time. You should not be flying blind or driving without clear vision on the highway. That is so dangerous. But that is what the human condition has been since the problems, genetic modifications at the level of intellect and other obscurifications that happened that made it so that you can't see. So it's not your fault. You are not guilty. You're doing the best you can under extreme circumstances. But man, oh man, you got to clear that windshield because you can't be expected to navigate without being able to see. I will bring up now a very silly show that has moments of brilliance called Rick and Morty. It's a cartoon show. And in one of the cartoons, let me grab a crystal. Morty, who is this teenage character, he gets a magical time crystal that he like tapes to his forehead. And he walks around all day with this crystal telling him the future. Like if he goes to the refrigerator, if he opens it up, like if you eat this, this will happen. And if you eat this, this will happen. And because he's a teenage boy, he's really obsessed with this one girl in his high school. Only thing that he's doing with all of the guidance that he gets from his time crystal is trying to figure out how can he get that girl to go out with him. That's the only thing. And so he changes all of these things in his life just to be able to manipulate reality so that he can achieve that very, seemingly small and inconsequential goal of a teenage boy. That's why it's a silly show, but it's a complex concept, is expressed effectively. The crystals that you have in your mind may not be this giant, but they are powerful and they are within your pineal gland. So in your pineal gland, you actually have microcrystals, not giant. You have small, very powerful crystals. And you can see how this has like, a point on it. The crystals in your pineal gland, they have to be up on their points like this, kind of like a ballerina, like up on their tiptoes, and also spinning around, pirouetting as a part of the nature of their function, up on their little points and spinning around. And there's an array of them. There's not just one of them, but those are similarly your crystals that you use to be able to perceive the future. And you should be able to have an intuitive sense about what's happening when you make a choice. Go to the refrigerator like Morty, and you're like, when I make this choice, is it bringing me closer to the membrane of death or bringing me more in alignment with who I am as divinity? And then, of course, if you're a good person like you guys are in this class, you make the right choice to go towards divinity and away from destruction. But there are crazy and evil people who literally choose to go towards the periphery. And that's also analogous to the person who's being offered a choice point, like someone is giving them a drug. And the choice point is take the drug go live in a cardboard box and destroy your life, or say, no, thank you. Like I'm more than that. I have something better to do than die in the gutter. I think I'll go in this direction instead. And that is free will. So that's why this is not a deterministic reality. A huge amount of influence over which direction you go. But of course, there are some injustices that might be foundational injustices, like things that are larger than your own life, things that were grandfathered in or residues from previous experiences before you were empowered, and other factors that are not within your control. So although it is a free will world, to recognize there are some things you're not responsible for, and that is also a critical aspect of the higher faculties. What are the things that are within your power? What are the things that you can free will? And what are the things that you cannot free will and that you have to work within those larger time structures? Everything about this structure does add up to the flavor of you. And that's also why it's essential to recognize, like in these alternative versions of reality, you exist, but not as like hugely wild, atypical distortions. There are different versions of you that still contain the same sense of who you are. So that Rick and Morty show is also pretty effective and I think intelligent in the way that it explores multidimensionality, because Rick has like a portal gun and he makes portals and they go to alternative realities all the time. And there's a whole different array of Ricks. So Rick is like the mad scientist. And there's one version of him where he's on this timeline, and a different version of him where he got one of his eyes poked out, so he has an eye patch, and a different version of him where he's doing something else, and a different version. And they all have their own unique flavor, but they have commonalities of his personality, of who he is. So these are not like random things. So I'm bringing up now, I know I'm a little bit lighthearted because I'm going into pop culture, but these are all like worthy shows. Some of these other shows are like The Magicians, which I like that one a lot. That one has a lot of magical violence. Just watch out if you're sensitive to violence, but otherwise great storyline, great writing. Because in some of the things that they have like a time distortion, magical confluence tint, where they can go in there for 1 minute and overlap with another timeline and talk with other versions of themselves. And on a different version of themselves, they're like in a magical Hogwarts like school. Someone came to the school and blew everybody up. And so when they're from the non-exploded school, and they talk with versions of themselves from the exploded school, and they've got all like scars, they're missing fingers. They're like, what happened to you? It's like somebody blew up our school. That's what happened to me. So it's like and they have different iterations. So there's like that. They're from timeline 23, where they blew up the school and everything went bananas. But we're from timeline 39, and that didn't happen there. So you start to recognize you have certain innate characteristics that are consistent. They are the definition of who you are as a soul. How you respond to different external realities is different across time, but you are actually still your true self. So please know this. In some versions of reality, you might have been put into some kind of apocalyptic nightmare, like, the timeline 23, where everything went kaplooey. And whatever, you've got an eye patch, you're like, it's like Escape from New York, Escape from LA, post-apocalyptic nightmare, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you turn into some kind of futuristic metal bikini clad warlord a la Tina Turner. You are still yourself. Doesn't mean you abandon your values. Doesn't mean you stop being yourself. This whole idea of circumstances make the person and using that as an excuse is not truthful or acceptable. You are who you are, and to express those truthfulnesses of your personality in a variety of different external environments. Sometimes when you're not in control of the environment, you might not be in control of the environment. If somebody blows up your school or creates an apocalyptic nightmare or whatever it is, but you are in control of your response to that extraordinary situation. So this is why we circle back to my assertion. Not everybody has the innate capacity to become a megalomaniac, axe murderer, psychopath, or anything like that. In fact, some of you are good people and have a time apparatus where there are no peripheral timelines where you become, whatever, an evil eye patch wearing warlord or something like that. That's not your response. Like if the world goes completely, you'd be like, I think I'm gonna help people and not, whatever, become a warlord. You just have a different response to what's going on. So this is important, and I'm simplifying and being very silly and using pop culture, but please know, because in my original writing from 10 years ago, I make it appear as if there is an excuse making or justification. Like when you meet Adolf Hitler and he looks like a mass murderer, you're like, well, that's who he is on this timeline, girl. But on this other timeline over here, he's a very, very nice person. I was like, no, actually, the timeline where you overlap, that is his peripheral timeline, where he is a mass murderer, actually represents a truthful aspect of his innate personality, where he's like, oh, harumph, reject me from art school, genocide. That's it. Watch me now, everyone. Watch me now, world. I'm I'm coming out. I'm clearly very silly. We'll have to wrap up class soon. But that was in him. That was in him, and that would be in him if he was an art student or if he became an artist. He'd be like, aha, and painting. Oh, Cheeky's over here looking cute, just sitting in the sunshine. Hitler as an artist. He's like, okay, this is the timeline where I'm actually a painter. I'm not a megalomaniac, but I'm doing something like take that flowers, take that flowers, take that bunny. I'm painting that. It's got that potential inside of him. So please do not think that there's an excuse for people who are pathogenic. They're not just exploring that on one timeline and then they're really, really great on another timeline. If you explore and perceive pathogenesis on pathogenic behaviors of a person on a particular timeline, that's an innate part of their personality. And just to reiterate, what is happening in our world right now is really a stress test of people's integrity, of who they are, of many different things. You're in a world where people are largely intoxicated by these different frequencies, particles, genetic experimentation, other forms of reality distortion. And it takes a huge effort to be a good person. It takes a huge effort. And on other timelines, there are not these limitations, and you can be a good person effortlessly. But if you are a good person, even on a timeline of extreme duress, that goodness is going to come out, but it just might come out in a smaller magnitude. Maybe whatever you make or buy a sandwich for someone, and it's okay, that's it. And also maybe you might look at your wallet, look, I only have $5 and I can't do it very much in the world, but at least I can take $5 and I can buy this guy a sandwich. All right, that's you on a smaller magnitude. But on a larger magnitude, when you are more on your ascended mastery timeline, you're like, oh, I figured out a way to feed the world or, to eradicate hunger completely. So these are different magnitudes. You would do the bigger, better thing if you could. You don't have those resources available to you. You're singing karaoke instead of singing like an opera singer. So for some people, the peripheral timelines are still a truthful expression of who you really are, but just at a smaller volume level or a smaller magnitude. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're an axe murderer. I think for most people who are good, the peripheral timelines are ones where there's either diminished opportunity that is largely not within your control because you're trying hard to do good and go the right direction, or other forms of incapacitation that make it so that you can't be who you really mostly are. And then also there are personal frailties, like I brought up addiction, the choice to take a drug, personal frailties like addiction. That's not the same as being evil. And it is a huge pitfall that if you make that one choice and take that drug that one time, that either you can overdose that first time or become hopelessly addicted going forward, that it is largely a choice of avoidance and choosing not to open certain doors that means that you have to avoid those things in order to have a good life. When that is truthful, what happens is you have, of course, multidimensional sight. In your eyes, you don't just have one retina cell. That's look, I saw one photon, even though you have to comprehend how miraculous your retinas are, but you can perceive one photon. You have to go someplace where it's really dark, no light pollution, right? And look up at the sky. And if you're able to perceive one of these little meteors or shooting stars, your eyes have to adjust. That's pretty much the equivalent of seeing one photon. So it means super, super, super duper light sensitivity. But you can see one photon. You just have to kind of like get yourself prepared. But that's a little bit of a side dish because you have a whole array. At the back of your eye, you have many retina cells that help you to be able to see what's going on. So in your life, you have many multiple concurrent timelines that you are using to be able to explore reality. And that's just within your life. Then you also have multiple versions of Earth. Let's go back to my whiteboard over here. Because each one of these reality structures, get a color you can see. This represents a story of Earth. This is where the beginning of Earth, and this is the end of Earth. And then this is Earth's history and everything that happens in the middle of Earth. That's just one version of the story. Because in a different version of the story, this is the stuff that happens over here. But in a different version of the story, this is the stuff that happens over here. So now you can understand that each one of these cells, this is a version of Earth. And this is a version of Earth. And this is a version of Earth. Sometimes there's a version of Earth where it's like, oh yeah, this is the one where a comet smushed everyone. Or this is the one where whatever, there was a tsunami. But this is the one where there's like nice, good, positive, benevolent solar rays and you're staying alive and having a good life. But they all add up to the multidimensional view of what life is. This is non-duality. So non-duality does not mean good and evil are the same. It does not mean that there's no distinctions to be made between various different qualities. And it doesn't mean that there are only two options. So when you have non-duality, because you want to say like there's three, because duality means two. So singularity means one. Duality means two. And then you want to say, so then moving beyond duality means three, right? And you've got one eye, two eye, and your inner eye, three, right? But it's actually more than three because you have more than just one option. You have a multidimensional option. So you have an array, an almost countless number of multidimensional options. Someone out there is thinking of that movie that is called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And that is a pretty good pop culture reference for this. I watched that movie, but I was dismayed by some of the violence and some of the gross, toilet humor, sexual stuff that was in there. But the foundational concept is interesting that people are exploring the nature and qualities of who they are on different life paths. On one life path, the main character runs not so glorious laundromat. She's like, this is not my best timeline. My best timeline is this one over here where I'm a movie star. But that was actually not her best timeline because she wasn't living her best life. And then she eventually came to comprehend that she had made good choices that led her to be the owner of the laundromat, but she had to definitely do better fiscal financial responsibilities because she's in debt. But this is what we're talking about. What is the definition of success? Is it success by society standards, like having a diamond ring or whatever, a fancy lifestyle or being notorious or celebrity famous? Or is it living according to the integrity of your heart? And I think you know the answer to that. Also, what brings you to longevity? Because if you're on a seemingly luxurious lifestyle path, but it destroys your body, that's not a good set of choices. There are, but again, sometimes people are offered opportunities like, hey kid, want to be rich and famous? That's great. All you have to do is take these extremely corrosive drugs and have your face be mutilated with lots of plastic surgery. And then also do weird sex stuff and then debase yourself in other ways. And then you can be a rich, fantastic celebrity. So maybe those are not the best timelines for you. And it's better to be on a timeline where you run a laundromat and like your face looks normal and you're not addicted to drugs. You didn't whatever with anyone. You didn't do whatevers with anyone sexually. And that's your better timeline. So now the answer is is there when I say moral absolutism, absolute truth, meaning empirical, 1 + 1 = 2, math. Is there an absolute truth of like what is right and wrong? And the answer is no. There's what is right and wrong for you. and what brings you closer to divinity and what brings you towards the periphery. But I don't want you to think that it's like, being harmful towards others is like going to bring you towards towards your central time, because you're like, well, if there's no right and wrong, then we're getting into some of this stuff that is like from the magician that is known as in physical reality. Oh my goodness, it's so amazing. I have blocked from this guy because I think he's so evil. Crowley, Aleister Crowley. My brain literally did not want to remember his name. So he erroneously said, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. And that is not truthful. The truth is, do what thou wilt, harming none. That is the whole of the law. So that's basically like saying there's not an absolute moral truth. Always do this, never do this. There is a personal choice in your free will, but without harming other people. This stuff over here, oops, I'm dropping papers. This stuff has huge impact on other people, the people around us. So it's not fair to simply say, like, I'm just doing me. I'm just busy, with my micro machinery doing me. You do you. It's like, no, your micro machinery is having an impact on me, and you can't just do that. So you can't just say, oh, do what thou wilt and do whatever you want to do. And you can't just say, do what you want to do in your own time bubble, when that is having an impact on all these other levels of reality. So you have to, as you start to gain your multidimensional perspective, reach into greater levels of personal responsibility. We also can talk about, we can talk about a lot of things. There was different nuclear tests that were done in the southwest of the United States in the 1940s before the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There were experiments that were done to experiment with fission and these types of bombs. And each one of them made a big giant tear in the fabric of reality. And these were occult experiments. I don't know if I would even call them rituals, because they kind of didn't even know what would happen, but they're like, let's do a thing. And tore open the fabric of reality. Same thing with CERN and these large Hadron particle colliders. They're making these consistent tears in the fabric of reality. And that is very harmful to all of us and is harmful to the fabric of time space itself. So it's not fair to be like, I'm just here like experimenting. I'm just here like hunting around on the piano, figuring out what's the right keys. It's like, no, you really do bear a very real responsibility to these multidimensional otherworldly selves. One of the things I liked in the Everything Everywhere All at Once movie is that a running joke is one of the main characters who is obsessed with like the donut, sorry, the bagel, the everything bagel, like because it's a tourist. It's a tourist. So they did explore the concept of the tourist. They did not get to flying rainbow lasagna, but the everything bagel, I thought that was very cute and funny. So I'm going to wrap it up soon. So if you have any questions, please definitely ask me. And let me also just take a moment to consult my notes and see if I've got this, if I got everything that was important. Let's also talk about why we have to have these outliers. Like, why do we not just have one skinny lollipop stick that goes up like this? Why do we even have this extra junk around the sides? And the answer is, like, that's supportive junk, structural junk. It's a load bearing junk. All right, it's supposed to be there. It's the bulk. So as consciousness comes into materiality, it does bulk. It does expand, because what you have is a super focused beam that then gets less and less and less and less and less focused. And that is what becoming denser and slower the physicality presence is. So the things that are added are extra. They are extra of necessity, but they are side dishes. If it was looking at your plate, like with food on your plate, like it's starches, it's side dishes, not the main entree. Like when you get your plate and you've got like meat and then some vegetables and then some potatoes, like eat your meat first and then eat your vegetables and then you eat the potatoes last, because that is starch. It's extras. It's not what you really need. It's just filler. That's what I'm trying to say. It is filler, not the focus of your life. And so when we live or lived in ancient concurrent Atlantis, and now you're starting to understand, like, oh, like maybe Atlantis is one of those time bubbles, yeah, or checkerboard patterns, yeah. When we live in that time, we don't explore any of the filler, don't explore any of the bulk. You know why? We're expert bread makers. Expert, what is it, patissiers? Make the pastries perfectly. We know exactly how many times to mix the dough. We know exactly how many times to knead the dough. We know exactly how long to bake bread to make every single loaf of bread perfect. And we never made any mistake. But you know how we could do that? Because we have a perfect time crystal with no crapola around us, no harmful frequencies, no erroneous technology, nothing that is misguiding us. And it's easier to make correct bread when you have a correct recipe and when you have an accurate thermostat on your ovens and when you have an accurate timer that's telling you like how long your dough needs to be kneaded for, whatever. Like we had accurately calibrated tools in our bakeries to be able to do things then. So please know that it is possible to achieve, possible, and I would say inevitable to achieve the state of inner mastery. But it just takes a lot of practice in this world. So inevitability particle, that's what I would like for you to think of yourself as. That as you're going through time, you have manifested into this physical material experience. And it is inevitable for you to re-achieve light speed and to get back to that place that manifested you and to bring with you all of your accumulated light, wisdom, perspective, and all the muscles that you've grown from being on that journey. So please know that it's inevitable. But what we don't know is how long it takes, how much bad stuff you might have to experience or endure or get through or heal from. I totally recognize a lot of people have been through some crapola in the world, and that it's not necessarily positive or easy to do that. And I would also say that that's not intentional to the divine presence that created this whole entire system. The divine presence didn't say like, let me make it as hard as I can on you. Like, let me screw with you as much as I can. I don't think that the divine presence did that. In fact, I know that the divine presence created really a very perfectly calibrated system that was very achievable. These goals being very doable. And then something else came along and twisted the knobs of reality and said, oh, I'm going to make it harder. Difficulty to 11, crap up the joint, change the calibrations, and see if I can keep these people stuck here for a longer, unfair amount of time. And so you're working now within a sense of cosmic injustice. But also please know that the more that you are able to focus and cultivate your attention, your inner eye, the easier and better your journey becomes. Because at a certain point, as your insight grows and you are able to not only precog and anticipate the future, you are also able to see how all of these complex time structures fit together. So you're able to, I call it insight. It's also intuit. Your insight and your intuition are similar, but not exactly the same. Because insight is when you see and you know, and intuition is when you feel and you sense, and you just have a feeling, a gut feeling. But these two aspects of yourself guide you very effectively to be able to move through these time structures so you know what you need to do and you know where you're going. And it's very, very different than having like a shrug, like, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. And then also when people are in that vulnerability of not knowing where to go or how to proceed, that is when people are really vulnerable to joining different cults and different belief systems that say moral absolutes, always and nevers, the 10 commandments, always do this and never do this, always act in this way, or also sometimes to impersonate others. If you would like to be successful, be like me, because I did it like this, and you can too, right? Like how to be an ascended master in 10 lessons, and you can too. Buy my book now. And this is like what a lot of philosophies, religions, and I'm being silly and facetious, but like looking up to ascended masters and those who have achieved greatness. And the answer is cannot take someone else's recipe and apply it to your own life. You must create and personalize and customize the path that you're making. And then you cannot compare paths with other people, because you can't be to someone else like, you know something, I did my ascension different than you. You're doing it wrong. They might be doing ascension correct for them. But I will also tell you that certain things do not lead to ascension, like self-destructive activities. When I'm using drug abuse as, pretty obvious one. But drug abuse and addiction do not lead you to ascension. And they're not gonna, those are peripheral timelines that lead you to the membrane of death. They do not lead you towards greatness where you really need to go. The loving approach is to say, like, well, I do me, you do you. And if you need to explore that on your pathway to ascension, good job, but I'll be going far away from you. And that's fine, unless they're a scientist at CERN, because that's worse than having a drug addiction. Like, if you want to shoot things into your own body and destroy your own biochemistry, that is your choice, although it does have a big impact and corrosion on your community. But if you want to shoot portals and collide particles and destroy the fabric of time, that is worse than taking heroin. And I cannot allow you to do that, because you're really, really hurting your community when you do that. So at a certain point in multidimensional perception, you also are obliged to stop the activities that are anti-ascension activities that other people are doing that destabilize you. So you can't just be like, well, I'm over here in my zone doing what I do, and you do what you do in your zone, because there is bleed through. Just as there, when I told you, like the marker that you put on the top layer that bleeds through to other layers of reality, there's bleed through or influence between people's lives. If you're a scientist at CERN and you open up and tear open a bunch of portals in this timeline reality structure, I'm in this reality structure, and you affected me with your terrible life choices. And we've decided to open a hell mouth, then let a bunch of demons in, then that's going to affect me. So we are not obliged to allow these negative explorations of negative behaviors if they have an impact on you. And that especially is truthful of stuff like this. And also this type of stuff is being put into the food supply, which makes me cuckoo bananas, because that is really bad. That is really, really bad. And everybody needs to eat food. And we do not want to have that stuff on our food. And crazy Bill Gates is out there spraying down, he's hosing down crops with that stuff as we speak. And that is not acceptable. And that he is doing a lot of bad stuff on his timeline. You can think about that. Like, is there a positive version of Bill Gates, or he's not like some kind of billionaire cancerous cell taking all this energy from other people and then spraying doo-doos on crops? Perhaps. And then the question is also, will he get an opportunity to explore and express that perfected version of self? Because this is the final thing I'll complete on, and then I'll go to all questions and comments. And thank you for your patience while I spoke about all these things today. Let's say we're at the video arcade again, like I'm a relic from another century here, like where you go to play Ms. Pac-Man, and you have a physical box, and you have to put quarters into the physical box to be able to play your video game. All right. You have a limited number of quarters, and also the arcade has a limited number of hours. And so you can say, like, I can just, Miss Pac-Man dies, and then I just put another quarter back in and I try again. And we joke about this, game over, try again, GOTA. And I think I also got that acronym from Pedro, but he doesn't claim ownership of it. Other people invented it before that. But game over, try again, wah, wah. And that's kind of the sense of going through these multiple time cycles to try to figure things out. If you're a crazy madman, you're exploring the time periphery, you're like, I'm doing everything wrong. I'm killing everyone. I'm spraying down the crops. I'm running CERN. I'm punching holes in reality. And you're like, yeah, let me make all these mistakes. And then one day I'll be an ascended master. That is highly presumptive. Although you might contain the potentials for ascended mastery, as each one of us contains potentials like that, is not inevitable that you're going to have enough quarters to put into the machine or enough time at the arcade to be able to finally explore that inevitability, which is the ascension pathway and the pathway out of this limited level of reality, or where your physicality presence becomes your real estate as you are reverberating on a higher level. Your mom might come to the arcade at 4:35 p.m. and say, honk, honk, honk. Come on, honey, it's time for you to go home. And be like, but mom, I have just a few more games to play to become an ascended master. She's going to say, no, you have to go home and do your homework. Or maybe it's whatever, 5:01. And the arcade owner says, okay, kids, time for you to go home, closing up shop. And you'd be like, but wait, I still have 10 more quarters left. And he'd say, wah, wah, sorry, even though you think you have more games to play, there's no more time. It is highly presumptive to think that you have an infinite amount of time to explore this, especially if you're doing stuff like CERN that destabilizes reality structures. Time is an alive animal. The arcade is alive, and you're making bad movements within the arcade. It's not necessarily going to be like, I think I'll give you more plays to be able to make more bad stuff happen. The arcade might close, or you get a chance to really explore all of those potentials. So although it is an very, very nice idea to say like, well, if only Hitler had more time, he could get refined and he could be a good person. And then when you go to heaven, you'll meet some nice guy one day and he'll be painting at a, plein air, and she's painting outside and making a nice little landscape, and you walk up to him and he's like, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Adolf Hitler. Don't worry, I'm the good Hitler. I got refined and this is my life now. That might not happen. All right. Please know. And of course, all of that is very facetious. But just because someone is a mass murderer, crazy, bad person, does not necessarily mean that you will eventually meet the evolved, ascended, perfected part of them in heaven. In fact, what is much more likely to happen is that they are devolving as you are evolving. As you are accelerating, learning, growing, and becoming a better person, you're going towards infinity. And you are going towards that paradise state. But they are devolving. They're getting worse. What if Hitler wasn't getting better at the arcade? What if he was getting worse? What if every life and every time he played the song, he played it worse? Intentionally or accidentally or whatever. We don't even have to ascribe a motive. But it's usually presumptive to think that he's always going to get better. Maybe he intentionally didn't want to, or maybe he didn't try hard, or maybe this, or maybe that. What must be recognized is there are some levels of consciousness and some characteristics that are moving towards entropy, and that is towards non-being. And when I talk about unconditional love, I'm not talking about love and affection. I'm actually talking about accepting the truth that some consciousness is de-evolving, not evolving. Some of it is going not negative entropy, construction, and birth. Some of it is going into genuine entropy, destruction, not being. And your goal is to come to an inner acceptance of that truth. That's really, really different than efforts to pick up, fix, heal, save, or otherwise facilitate. Be like, come on, Hitler, you can do it. Get up and be a good person. That might not be his path. And you might not be helping by doing that. You might be better by being like, something, Hitler, just get out of the arcade. Save your quarters, stop playing, the arcade is closed, and you stop doing anything now. That is the essence of what flying with lasagna and entropy is. And that is done with characteristics that are not life-affirming, genetic quotients that are not life-affirming, and then sometimes organisms or organizations that are not life-affirming. And please know that it does require an enormous amount of personal strength and wisdom in order to use that tool or to wield that gift effectively. And so you're on a journey, like I talked about this in previous 2 weeks, when you naturally activate your higher faculties. So not like Morty from Rick and Morty. You cannot simply buy one of these at the interdimensional crystal shop and be like, ta-da, like now I can see the future. I'm going to get that girl to marry me. You can't do that. You have to work to earn the activation of your pineal gland and the crystals that are inside of there. When you do that, the efforts of work and learning bring you to levels of wisdom so that you do the right thing when you get those powers. This is why there is a value in going through this process of building yourself, I want to say at the gym, in reality, like why do you do these strength training exercises? Why are you moving through these efforts? Because you learn to be a better person and you gain the wisdom and you learn how to use your powers and you learn when to send something to entropy and when to fix something. When can you pick up a person and be like, come on, get up, ascend, be good. And when do you say to something, you're a lost cause? Time for you to go to entropy and, stop, put us all out of your misery, right? That is, again, not a one-size-fits-all solution to every situation. It is unique to every situation. It is unique to each organism, unique to each thing, and it's part of the calculations that I'm an expert at, and that one day it is possible for you to be an expert at as well. There's not a pressure on you to be able to do this because it takes as long as it takes to learn how to do that. But you begin the process of learning so that way you can, become more wise and learn how to actually use your gifts. And this is, when I talk about the wisdom process of achieving your gifts, this is from many different wisdom traditions, like from Buddhist traditions, like basically anyone who really knows about what these psychic powers are. There have lots of different stories and tales and teaching stories about the different efforts that you had to go through, initiations, efforts, mentorship, guidance, and then finally achieving your full levels of empowerment and responsibility. And that's appropriate. And it's also similar, in ancient concurrent Atlantis, we went through learning processes. Like here in this world, like, you learn how to tie your shoes, whatever, you learn how to drink a cup of water or juice without getting it all over. You learn how to coordinate yourself. And then you learn how to ride a bicycle or roller skates or whatever. You level up, you learn more. You did the same type of thing in ancient concurrent Atlantis. Please know that that is totally appropriate. You're not expected to know everything at the beginning of your journey, and you should be given a safe and, I want to say, facilitative, supportive, like whatever it is, the type of environment where you can actually, like if you're in a gymnastics situation, they've got the mats so you don't break your bones. Safe place where you've got puffy mats so that you can learn without totally destroying yourself or destroying the fabric of space-time. And that's also why, like, we can't give certain toys to some of these scientists because they are playing with firecrackers and they're ready to destroy the fabric of space-time. And they are not in a supportive, safe learning environment. They're totally in a break your bones learning environment, and they're going to break all of our butts too. It's not okay. All right, so thank you very much. Now let me get to wonderful, good comments here. Thank you. Okay, so over here, good. Joyce says, thank you, Professor. I'm grateful to know you and appreciate your service to humanity and other beings. You're wonderful, and I just love and adore you. Beautiful comment. Thank you so much, Joyce, and love right back to you. I appreciate your friendship, your caring, and for being such a good student. You're always right here in class, and you always make like the first comments in all of my archives. So thank you very much. And Joyce loves Cheeky too. Thank you really for that, guys. I mentioned that during the break. Thank you for all the love that you give to Cheeky. And thank you for giving me those moments when I need to care for her because she's a big part of our life. Thank you. Oh, and here's another nice thing. So Joyce also says, great job on the book you made. I read it yesterday. Okay, this is cool. So I know now I get to do a little bit of like self-promotion, but it's for really cool stuff. So I wrote this comic book that is actually a documentary and is 100% true, called Another Day in Hell. And I did that in order to be able to have a visual language and talk about things that are just like very difficult for me to describe with physical words. So I got some mental freedom and I created this little story. And so I have it available as a PDF. Like, you can download the ebook, and you can either keep it or you can print it out. But if you want to, I can send you a hard copy. And I did put it up as like a little video montage for YouTube also, because I want people to I want this to go far and wide. I want people to see it. It's very revelatory and important stuff that's in there, even though I have done it in a very darkly humorous way. So I'll include all of the links to that, where you can find it, where you can read it. If you want to support the project, I, of course, greatly appreciate that. You know, I want to say, like, you have my permission to share it with others, but just, you know, always give me the credit. Just be like, yeah, I got it from Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Okay, so, but I want people to read it and know what's going on. Brenda B says, huge gratitude and love, Professor Aurora. Thank you so much, and huge gratitude right back to you. Okay, so we got a question here from Charlie B. He says, is Aurora also working on other timelines here? Or is this the last viable timeline? I assume Aurora comes from a reality structure outside of space and time. So how did you pick this reality structure to enter and repair? I am, like you, working with a structure that is like this. Although I am a walk-in, so my structure is a little bit different. Like, where I came in was not at birth in this body, but was in chronological adulthood in this body. But once I came into this body, I also did a couple of other things. The previous occupants' time structures were not relevant to me. So as I came in, I took some of her time structures, but then added and augmented a bunch of new narratives. So yes, I am functional or operational on a variety of time structures. Like you, I have one central core timeline that brings me back to the source that emanated me. And I have a lot of dead ends that go to either side. And I have to learn to make good choices in what I'm navigating here. And in order to make those good choices, I am using my inner vision, and I'm, you know, continually refining myself. This is the last viable timeline. There's actually so much I can talk about, because I would like to say, you know, in the events that I depict in that comic book that I did, some of the things that happened to me in the past 5 years, like, actually were artificial efforts to take me from being on my truthful timeline here and forcibly, like, shove me into the membrane of death. And every time miracles occurred that made it so that I was able, like, pulling out the nosedive, didn't go on the membrane of death. So clearly I am still here. But there were a lot of times when I was this close to getting to the membrane of death, and then was able to get off of that timeline that perilously. So in many ways, I'm similar to you, but also there have been a lot of efforts to artificially drag me onto peripheral timelines. And these things in the population around me were a part of that, because I am a telepath and an empath and very connected to all of the DNA structures that are here on this planet. Destabilizing everyone else's DNA was definitely an effort to try to destabilize me. But I am now restabilized on my optimum timeline. So this is my optimum timeline, because I am back in free will control over my own life and able to override the erroneous signals of the world around me. And some of the things that I learned on the peripheral timeline is where I would have died, I needed to fight back sooner. That's some of the things I needed to learn. I needed to learn that, first of all, the protective mechanism, and we talked about this somewhat in class last semester, the benevolent society of Christed individuals and the protective force fields around reality and around this planet, that those had been breached or eradicated. I thought there was a lot more protection. I thought I had a lot more protection. And so, you know what it's like this? Imagine that you're like, oh, look, I live in my house with my roommate and we're almost out of milk. And I know, like, my roommate's going to go out there and get that milk. I'm going to have milk for coffee in the morning. Everything's going to be fine. And then he doesn't get the milk. And you're like, I thought that guy was supposed to get the milk. Well, I guess I'll just have to go to the store and get it myself. That's my life. I'm like, those guys are going to protect me in this planet. This bad stuff isn't going to happen. The sun is going to intervene. They didn't happen. They did not do that. And so my regrets were that I did not act sooner. I could not have known that my roommate would not buy the milk. I could not have known that the sun wouldn't eradicate some of this incredibly harmful technology. I could not have known that the protective mechanisms and fail safes would fail, and that I needed to do a lot of things in order to stay alive. Like I can't just focus on my art and music, that I had to fight very effectively. Please watch my video or look at the PDF of Another Day in Hell, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I've had to learn to really fight as a force majeure to be able to stay alive myself and to be a protective force field around this planet when all of these other things that things and people and organisms that should be functional were non-functional. So this is the optimum timeline because it's the one where I figured out like, oh, no one else is getting the milk at the store. Aurora gets the milk at the store. Aurora gets the milk at the store. Once I figured that out, then we're fine. That's it. It's just that inner resolve. You're sitting around waiting for someone else to do something and you realize they're never gonna effing do it. And then you're like, oh, if I want to stay alive, and if I want this planet to stay alive, and if I want the fabric of space-time to stay alive, I'm gonna have to do it. And that's it. That was the only thing that had to change inside of me. And then I found the inner resolve to either do what I could do with my gifts or get new gifts. Because Flying Rainbow Lasagna is not just lasagna, it's a pasta factory. You can make any kind of pasta. You can make linguine. You can make wagon wheel shapes. You can make bow tie shapes. Make anything with Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So that's all I needed to learn. Chiki's going to want to go outside in a minute. So let's go through the rest of this question. So how did I pick this reality structure to enter and repair? I actually want to give you a more extensive answer on that too. That goes back to what is in linear time 2001, when I saw the previous occupant of this body was in the moment of death. That was when I was in my multidimensional perspective, seeing the entire time field, like all of the movie squares at one time, not just as a linear embedded in time experience of the flow of time. And I can see that I needed to do something then if I wanted to continue to exist. So the reason why I came into this particular body and became this particular physical presence who is talking to you here today is because every other timeline where I chose not to do something like that was kaput, was a dead end timeline. In fact, not just dead end in terms of Earth, but in terms of the entire fabric of space-time. So it's like if you look at a small spark that is starting a fire somewhere, and you're pretty much like, if I don't do something about that, it's going to be the entire kitchen. It's going to be the entire house. It's going to be the entire neighborhood. It's going to be the entire county. Everything burns down. That was what I could see in that moment. And it literally was what made me create the Flying Rainbow Lasagna in that moment. Because by creating the lasagna, creating the pasta factory, and entering into reality, I truncated all of those negative timelines where nothing was done and started an impossibility structure where something was done. Some new variable enters the terrarium and makes it so that something happens. And you know why that happened? Because literally the cosmos augments itself by necessity. Before I made and innovated lasagna, there were no viable timelines. It was just the spark catches fire, everything burns down, and then you just have a bunch of ashes. Dun, 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 the end. And I looked at that and I said, that is not acceptable to me. And I'm literally the only one in the higher dimensions that said, that's not acceptable. I'm going to do something. And I made the inner resolve to do something. And what I resolved to do was to make Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And then I entered into reality. And then now I created this cascade of time events that brings me to this moment now. So there was that initial decision in 2001 that brought me in. But then even within that decision, there's a array of possibilities. Like on some possibilities, some timelines, I moved to California. Some timelines, I stayed in New York. And you know why I didn't stay in New York? Because all the timelines where I stayed in New York State are non-viable timelines. I did not stay alive on those timelines. So inwardly, I can tell, I'm like, I'm getting close to the membrane of death. I better move to California. Then I moved to California. And I'm like, okay, things are good, but I have to move to Southern California. I moved to Southern California. I'm like, okay, things are getting better, and things are getting like you continually move to avoid the membrane of death. But at a certain point, I'm not just like hopscotching away from death. At a certain point, I'm moving in positive, innovative, or motivational directions. So you're not always just like running from scary things, like I'm running from evil clowns, I'm running from this, I'm running from that. At a certain point, you're like, oh, I stay alive by moving forward in this positive direction. So please know that that is also truthful. You're not just being reactive. You also, at a certain point, are proactive, where you stay alive by initiating the reality experiences you want to experience. And that is also what I'm doing on this timeline here, where I'm like, oh, I don't just want to run away from or fight against evil. I want to create world seeds of awesome future realities. And that is what I do. And Avril says, I'm interested in this as I'm being attacked. And not only this timeline, but other versions of timelines of me, which is exhausting, LOL. Of course it is. Very, very comprehensible to that. So, like I said, there's not an off-the-rack, one-size-fits-all solution, because Avril, your DNA is unique to you and your time trajectory is unique to you. So the calculations that rectify your timeline are also going to be unique to you. But I do know that you have the innate capacities inside of you, and that there are different exercises or self-cultivational things that you can do to build your time muscles, to be able to see clearly through your activated higher faculties, see and sense and anticipate the future, and then also to act effectively. And in my own life, some of the things that I had to do was not just to see and sense effectively, but to poke every sacred cow and think every forbidden thought. Because staying on a viable timeline sometimes has to do with doing things that you think like, I'm not allowed to do that. And you might have to do that. Whatever is a sacred cow. Something that you think you're not allowed to do, whatever, punch someone in the nose. You're like, but wait, Gandhi tells me not to punch someone in the nose. That might be absolutely essential for you to do on your timeline. So fighting back is a big one. And also being preventative or proactive. You can't just play a defensive game. Sometimes you have to have offense. The best defense is a good offense. This is like when you're in soccer or some other game like that. Totally theoretical. I've never played soccer in my life, but I hear that you have to try to make goals. You cannot just protect your own goal. So sometimes the forbidden things are to say, well, what is it to be a spiritual master? Does it mean wearing white robes and sitting peacefully on a mountaintop? That is not always what spiritual mastery looks like. Sometimes spiritual mastery looks like punching someone in the nose or fighting against them. Or are you advocating for violence? I will call the police on you. They call the police. Call the police. I am the police. But I don't abuse power. So just please know, it's very important for you to reassess the innate inhibitions that hold a person back from doing certain things. Think the forbidden thoughts. And then that might be exactly the direction that you need to go in. Some of those forbidden thoughts, what makes them forbidden, has not been your own self-control, but something that is trying to control you by saying that it is socially appropriate. But of course, without knowing more about your specific life experiences, I cannot tell you exactly what to do. And I'm not just telling you to, don't just punch random people in the nose, of course. But you might have to fight back effectively. iPhone saying thank you so much. You're so welcome. Michael says thank you, Master Roy. You're very welcome. And I know your schedule. I'm sure you're going out to Sungay, so please eat some sunlight. Kim Rose says wonderful class. Thank you so much. You're very, very welcome. And Avril says thank you. Love the teachings as always. She says thank you. That helps. I will work on that today. And yes, I have a lot of butt to kick on this as it affected my father too. I really understand. So when it involves, when you have a complex time structure when it's just one person. But then once you add the variable of another person, you have just gone from like 10 to the 32nd to 10 to the 32nd times 2. Like that's a lot of complex calculations. There's a lot of moving parts involving there. And then you also have all the rest of humanity and every other organism that's on this planet. It's a lot of time mechanics to try to sort through. So that's why it's a non-rational approach. The rational mind would be incinerated if you tried to make these calculations. But what you can use is your intuition and your insight that will guide you in the directions that you need to go. So if you feel like you're under attack, you might have to attack back. And if you feel like you're under attack and someone you love is being attacked, you might need to protect them and fight in order to protect them. And this might bring up all sorts of things like, well, what is the right thing to do? What is the morally absolute thing to do? Is it right to fight? Is it right to be a martyr? Is it right to get killed? Is it right to do this? Is it right to do that? And that's why all of these human books on philosophy will like drive you effing insane. Because one book will say, it is always right to do this. And then the other book will say, it is never right to do this. And it will put you into a cognitive dissonance that is impossible to emerge from. This is literally predator's mind that has been implanted into humanity and intentional degradation and inhibitory structures. So you will not find the answer in a book of philosophy, although you might study various different approaches to what is right and what is wrong in the world, moving into the age of Aquarius, and we can sing that song, as I always laughingly do, is the age of responsibility, self-responsibility. So in the age of self-responsibility, you say, this is right because it is right, because I choose to do what I choose to do, not because a book told me it was right, not because the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or a man on a mountaintop told me it was right to do. I do this because I know it is right. In my own artwork, when I make my paintings, I make it look the way I want it to look because I know that's what is right. And if someone is an art critic and they come along and they say to me, Aurora, this painting is good, but it definitely needs more purple. I'm like, no, that painting does not need more purple. I put exactly the right amount into there and I know why. And I can write a dissertation for you on why I did all of that. So it is a self-assuredness that comes from my own connectedness and my own calculations that I've done. So I don't have self-doubt. I'm not going to come along and be like, I'm going to erase it. I'm going to erase my painting and make it better. In your life, I would like each person to come at similar levels of self-assuredness, where you're like, you know something, I made this choice. Like maybe you made a choice to relocate from one area of the world to another area of the world. And someone else is going to come along and be like, wrong color, erase it all now. You have to be like, no, I made that choice. I know what I'm doing is right. I follow my own inner guidance, not a man on a mountaintop or the Bible, Bhagavad Gita. So in terms of when is it right to fight back, how much can you fight back? You know, I also will tell you, I enjoy watching some of these superhero shows sometimes. Sometimes they're hyper violent. Don't be concerned about me if I watch it. But I like, sometimes they do explore the concept of what is it to have superpowers and how much are you allowed to use them and when? Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Superman or something like that. Like, are you required to leave your adversary alive? You know, because you fight them to a duel. Fight them to a duel, and then they're down on the floor and they're like, I surrender, I surrender. And you're the good guy. Are you required to catch and release? Do you have to let them go? Or can you smash them to smithereens? And I am here to tell you, in my own life, I think you can smash them to smithereens. Even though a lot of our mythologies and pop culture say, no, if you're a good person, you just tie them up with your magic golden lasso and then deliver them to the police. And then they can be in cosmic jail for a certain amount of time. And then they can come back and hurt you again. I'm like, no, that is not a positive time cycle. And you know what? If someone comes at you with lethal force, it's Texas justice. If they come across your front doorstep, they're inside of your house. You can destroy them. If they are coming into your body, you can destroy them. And I think that this is truthful also if you have superpowers, because we talk about the moralism of Superman. You know, Superman is an alien extraterrestrial from another world, and he gets his powers here from the funky yellow sun of our world. And he has a sense of moral obligation to the people of this planet who are weaker and more vulnerable than him. And so he often thinks like, oh, like I can't just go around killing people. Like, you're smaller. You're like the Lilliputians. You're tiny. And I'm big. So I can't just squash you. But that's actually Texas justice. Like if you walk around and some evil supervillain is trying to hurt you, you actually are allowed to destroy them. So the moralism, I explore the moralism as it's presented in these fictional universes, but I don't necessarily agree with it. But then, there's definitely something to be said for the wisdom of wielding your gifts. So what I do agree with in Superman is that Superman didn't go into the human Olympics. He was not ego driven to say, like, I'm in competition with other people and I want to show off my powers and see if I can win a gold medal by running faster than you. Like, we all know you can run faster than a human, like you're an extraterrestrial and you're different than others. So he's not trying to exploit it or like work the system in some way, but that doesn't mean that he has to be a victim, diminished or attacked by the human villains that consistently want to take him down because he's a big target, because he's a big person. So when you're a hero and you're moral, they often make it seem like you can't destroy evil. And I think that is what it is to be a hero and to be moral, is to destroy evil. I think that is very, very important, to give yourself, to not give, to claim for yourself that inner freedom, but then also take responsibility. Did you destroy that evil? Be like, yes, yes, I did. I destroyed that evil. And you know what? When you have your time crystal, there's no question. If someone comes along and is like, did you destroy that evil? Like, I destroyed that evil and I literally saved 1 billion lives by destroying that evil. It was a very, very good choice. And no one should be able to be critical of you. Oh, too bad. Michael's saying it's raining and so no sun gazing. So that's okay. And Kate says, fabulous class, Master Aurora. Thank you very much. I love lasagna. Thank you so much. And you're so very welcome. And thank you for your great respect. Kate had written to me that she wasn't sure if she could come to the meeting on time. She didn't want to disturb me by coming in late. So just thank you very, very much for that respect. And everybody's been very respectful and mindful about entering the meeting and muting. So thank you, because it really does help me to be on track. And I hope that I've never seemed overly harsh in my disturbances when that happens. So thank you. I think I'm going to wrap it up so that way I can take Chiki out for a walk. But think about this. Also, there are a lot of the superhero genre. Some of the things that I enjoy exploring and watching are some of these stories about like a magical potion that gives you superpowers. And this is also important to recognize. Superman came and also learned wisdom, and he gained his powers naturally. If you drink a magical elixir, glug, 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 and you're like, now I'm the Ubermensch, read my comic book, it doesn't necessarily give you wisdom along with your gifts. And that is a lot of what this type of stuff is doing in our world. There's a lot of artificially augmented people who don't know their butt from a hole in the ground. And they are not moral, they're not good. And they're doing a lot of bad things with their technologically augmented, genetically amplified, fake psychic gifts. And those people are incredibly dangerous. They're more dangerous than just like regular whatever, butt heads. They are augmented butt heads, and they're dangerous to all of us. And if you know someone like who's a maniac who's running around with a weapon, you should stop them from doing that. For some people, their mind has become the weapon. Their consciousness and their augmented gifts, and they're destabilizing and harming the world through what they are sending out, and they need to be stopped. Scientists at CERN need to be stopped. People who are acting in ways that hurt other people on a grand scale need to be stopped. And it would be very, very sad if people were like, I'm trying to be so moral and trying to be so good and I'm clutching my pearls, I'm not going to do anything. And I'm just going to let this bad stuff go on. I think those are the worst timelines. So please know that in your own efforts to be good, it is much better to intervene than to stand by complicit on the sidelines and be like, a hem a haw, I don't want to do the wrong thing, so I'm just going to let this bad stuff happen. You will never regret trying. You will regret not doing something. If you try and you tank and you make a bad choice and it's bad, and you own it and you say, I made a bad choice, but at least I was trying to go against evil. At least I was trying to protect the innocent. At least I was trying to do the right thing. And again, if you make mistakes in those efforts, you will be held responsible. Your intention will be appreciated, and then you'll be given an opportunity to fix it. This is the universe. Don't make me tap that clipboard. Like, look, you tried, good intention, but wrong note, wrong note. And then you're like, oh, let me fix it. And you get a chance to fix it because the key point is that your intentions are good. So really what distinguishes people that have a timeline where like your periphery, maybe you make mistakes, but you're not an axe murderer, from axe murderers, a lot of it is intention. Axe murderers don't just come up because they are traumatized. Poor me, I'm an axe murderer. I've been traumatized. Like, like therapize me, it's not my fault. Mommy issues. And that's also, I joke about that. Some of these superheroes and science fiction stories, it's just mommy issues in space. And that means like people with mommy issues, they've got technology added to them. And that's what you see amplified. And that's also, I was just watching this show that's called The Boys. That's totally the epitome of that. Artificial injections give people superpowers, and some of them are extraordinary, but they have huge mommy issues, and it comes out. Till you fix the mommy issues, no one should be getting amplifications. You should heal and grow as you get your gifts and learn how to apply them properly. And also, you're in community, and when other people are acting erroneously in community, it's also totally appropriate to set boundaries. And this has to do with like stopping super evil super villains from doing their thing in the world. I think actually like with micromachinery, fictional injections on TV show and other things that give people powers or artificially augment them. I think what they're really doing is just turning up the volume on whatever is inside of you. And that goes back to the sense of the inside becomes the outside. He's barking, sorry. If your inside becomes the outside, so hold on a moment, hold on. If your inside becomes the outside, sorry, Cheeky's barking. Enough. If your inside is screwed up, you got mommy issues. And then it becomes your outside, you will have mommy issues outside. If you turn it up to 10 to the 32nd with some kind of a magical elixir or technology, then you'll have mommy issues on the outside. And you know what? A lot of what we have in this world is that the unhealed inside of flawed human beings being artificially amplified and augmented through technology. And then we all have to deal with it. And when that happens, it becomes the extinction explosion, a behavior that is so magnified that it cannot be ignored anymore and must be addressed. The behavior must go extinct, because if we don't eradicate it, we will not have a world anymore. So that is what we see going on a lot. Oh, Avril says, LOL, there's a show called The Boys, very gory and yet totally, but it shows the negative side of superheroes and augmented people with compound B. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the show that I watched. So again, very, very violent, graphic show. So please don't watch it if that is troublesome to you. But to me, it was cathartic and good exploration of some of these concepts. And I appreciate it very much. The one main character there is a superhero named Homelander, who literally is the epitome of mommy issues. And he is a megalomaniac because he's just essentially a regular flawed human being who is medically experimented upon and got superpowers. Very different than Superman. Again, Superman is a natural magical person who came into our world and as such has, let's say, an innate life path to utilize his gifts in a positive way. Because that's how I consider myself as lasagna. I'm a natural, innate anomaly, an unusual person, and I come by my gifts naturally, and I have the accrued wisdom over many, many parallel past and concurrent life experiences to be able to use my gifts. And that's part of the calculations that I do, so that way I know that I'm doing things correctly, and also in how I teach others and what I make available to each one of you. And so that's why I teach you about like the value system of what we're trying to do here and who you're trying to be, and even like going through this class and then trying to lasagna, like there's a reason why I do all of these things and why I've done it the way I've done it for over 20 years, very intentionally, because when I came here, I'm like, how am I going to positively influence humanity with this tool for freedom that is known as lasagna, and it is non-arbitrary. So when I say you can rearrange any book into a great work of art, it is non-arbitrary. That means you can start out with the telephone book and turn it into Shakespeare, but Shakespeare is non-arbitrary. There is some sense of the innate goodness and structure of that writing that is good. When you're doing your DNA, you're not supposed to just take your DNA and turn it into some crazy distorted thing. You're supposed to turn it into your greatness. So in that show called The Boys, the people take this injection and it gives them weird superpowers that might make them monstrous. It might give them tentacles or some kind of grotesque deformity that is their superpower, but that's not what they're really supposed to be. It is an erroneous amplification of certain areas of their DNA. So no, you're not supposed to, whatever, grow arms that are 12 feet long or some other grotesquerie of your body. You're supposed to grow augmentations that are innate to you and also in the correct order. So also when I do session work with people and I talk about the awakening of your light body, everybody's light body awakens, you turn up the volume in your own unique pattern. Like when you're a tiny child, some children learn to walk very quickly, but they don't learn to read till they're like 5 years old, and that's their path. Other kids learn to read when they're 2 years old, but they don't learn to do other things very quickly. So please know, at a certain point, everybody gains all of these capacities. You gain your capacity to see the future, you gain your tactile capacity, you gain the capacity to move through time, to do all these different complex maneuvers that I do. But it doesn't happen in the same order. So some people, they're clairaudience awakens first. For some people, their clairvoyance awakens first. For some people, it's the tactile sense. I've met a couple of people where it's their ability to smell and taste. Yes, you can smell the future. And I've met people who do it. But at a certain point, each one of us achieves the totality. And so now you're all in adulthood and you've all learned how to walk, talk, tie your shoes, read, do everything. But you're different. You're formative stages under 5 years old were a complete unique path to you. It's the same thing with psychic powers in your light body. You're just an infant of consciousness. You're just figuring out with your inner eye how to make sense of seeing a face, seeing time, becoming literate in time, learning how to read time events. You got to get yourself together on those levels, and then you learn how to navigate time, just like toddling, and then eventually walking and running. And then you also learn how to make stuff happen in time. And that's like reproduction. And you should not do that until you are mature. You should not try to make stuff happen when you're still a toddler, figuring out like how to get the juice and not spill it all over everything like that. And then also you need to have guidance and mentorship. I hope to be a good guide and a good mentor, but we all need guidance and mentorship that gives us boundaries and kind of like keeps us going in the correct pathway for our own unique development. And so you know what real guidance and mentorship is? It's Christ, the inner teacher. When you awaken those crystals that are inside of your own pineal gland, that is what gives you that inner guidance and unique set of exercises that you need to do. So the best thing I can do for anyone is just get you to awaken your inner teacher, and then your inner teacher takes the rest of the way because it's unique to each person. So that way you get your customized curriculum. Okay. All right. Very good. So Cheeky's definitely telling me that it's time to go to the park. Mary Ellen says, grateful you're still here. Thank you very much for that, Mary Ellen. I am too. And clearly, if I knew then what I knew now, I would have acted very differently rather way back in like 2019 or even 2018. I might have acted differently. But also, you know something? I literally did not have the muscles then that I have now. So my dance, my genetics, my physical body has changed and grown to be able to do what I do now. and I couldn't have known and been that person back then. So that's how I'm compassionate and accepting of myself. Because even though I'm like hard on myself, I'm like, I should have acted sooner. I'm like, I didn't know and I didn't have the muscles. And it took time for me to grow the wisdom and grow the muscles. And as soon as I did, I acted. And then I also learned, like, don't wait for your roommate to go to the store. Go to the store. Be proactive. Do it yourself. All right. So that's a good thing to end upon too. And I hope that you're all the good people. I hope that everyone is taking this in the correct context, because I don't want you to ever Dwayne Hubler or like, be needlessly proactively violent in any type of way. But sometimes um preventing something is necessary. Sometimes it's necessary to act now so that worse harm does not come forward. Like the Terminator 2 movie, where they're going to destroy the scientist now so that way he doesn't create something that's going to F up the future. Sometimes you have to do things like that in your own personal life or in your human society. But you get your time crystal activated first so you can see clearly, so that you make sure that you're making the correct decisions when you do that, and then you take responsibility for the decisions that you made. Okay, good. I gotta go take care of Cheeky. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your excellence as students. Thank you for taking the time to be here in my class. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And also thank you to everybody who is able to access this as an archive later, because I know that some people have busy lives and can't always be here during the actual lecture. Okay, you're fantastic. You're doing good. Thank you very much, everyone.